GM.
Oh, GM indeed. We had a bit of a whirlwind weekend, didn't we, Andy?
I mean, yeah. The market took a whirlwind, that's for sure. Friday night, it was like, we're going to zero. And then Saturday evening was like, oh, we're straight. Sunday morning was like, oh, wow, are we really going to go to all-time highs? Like, it was the most bipolar weekend in crypto I've ever seen. Bro, because usually you get so much pain. Like, when those dumps happen, they usually last for like, several days. Like, we usually are in the dumps of hell for like weeks on end. And I feel like we just kind of got out of that, which was nice.
Pretty nutty. There was several things obviously that factored into why the situation unfolded like it did. We're going to get into all of those. We've got quite a few market commentators that are going to come on the stream today that are going to give us some more perspective. There was, again, quite a few factors that we could look into. Our first guest today, 𝘗𝘳𝗧𝗓𝗏, sounds like a Greek philosopher. He had a great recap about what happened over the weekend, Black Friday, what happened. He's going to be our first guest coming on in just a few minutes. So we're going to hear from him. Generally, I mean, open interest got cut in half. There's things about like what happened on Binance. Why did Binance open interest why was it a little bit more substantial and stable than things that happened on Hyperliquid? I'm hearing that this is more of a technical crash than it was a fundamental one, and that's why we're recovering so nicely. Generally, I think obviously this is going to have repercussions and ripple effects throughout markets for the upcoming weeks to months to, if not years. Biggest liquidation in crypto history, upwards of 20 billion in liquidations. We're hearing that market making firms got completely wiped out. Stay tuned for rumor mill. But ultimately, I think there's some takeaways from here that we're generally going, it almost feels like the technology reacted better to some of these cataclysmic movements than it has in previous market crashes. Hyperliquid stayed online the entire time. We did have some outages. There wasn't, we'll get into the USDE Athena kind of shakeup, but there wasn't any major Oracle mishaps. For the most part, these things stayed online and they worked as they're intended. Users may not like that. Users may have gotten liquidated and they're not too favorable when it comes to that. But in general, these systems worked as they're intended. And there were some things that were exposed. And I think that ultimately is a learning experience and it presents an opportunity for improvement. So we're going to get into all of that and more coming right up. Andrew, are you there? Do we have you?
Leveraging was
Yes.
a pretty interesting setup here. People didn't really realize, there was like some tweets like the gang learns about auto deleveraging.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened there? So yeah, I think we got 𝘗𝘳𝘧𝗓𝗏 up first. He is the founder of a company called Klyra. I think I believe that they're doing perps type of work basically. I don't know if exactly it's perps platform or exactly what the product is, but yeah, I mean, I saw him this weekend on Laura Shin talking about what happened, and so yeah, I think we just want to kind of get his take on that. That rumor mill tweet that I had, freaking block was hot. I mean, that thing's at like 300,000 views. Tweet was basically
are you gonna give us the
rumor
two
mill
market makers that you're talking about?
Large trading firms. My DMs are flooded right now. Rumor mill currently saying 2 large trading firms were liquidated to zero. Hearing different takes, but the idea is that they owned a book of top 100 market cap tokens, which were collateralized against each other in size up to $1 billion. Now, it's not like they had $1 billion of like actual spot value, but it's like maybe they had a couple $100 million spot value, and then they were levered up, to a 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and became forced market sellers of their entire book. There's one thing in crypto you don't ever want to be is a forced seller. I mean, in all markets, you really don't want to be a forced seller ever. But in crypto specifically, the last thing you want to be is a forced seller. So, I think that's kind of what we are trying to avoid in this market. And
we've seen time and time again, the winners just survive. And one of my favorite tweets, I mean, Twitter was absolutely firing over the weekend. It was just full of emotional responses. It was just I saw one tweet. This is the most spirited crypto Twitter has been since 2022. Feel like that's accurate. Generally, we saw people that were euphoric. We saw people that bears were celebrating, bulls were crying.
I know.
People got liquidated, and the memes were hilarious. One of my favorite ones was only the divinely protected and the multi-cycle survivor cockroaches are still around. So from one multi-cycle surviving cockroach to another, it's good to see you still here. And I'm glad that we made it through.
I mean, dude, Sol's back above 200 right now. Just popped up to 201. ETH sitting at 4170. I mean, bro, I saw Ben Cohen was just calling for ETH to go straight to 5K now. Like, that guy's been so dialed. Bro, he was I would be watching Ben's videos and I'd be like, and this is the thing that Ben is like getting a meme for, is like, I'd be watching his content and being like, I hope, like, what he said was going to happen was so spot on technically and like from like a logical reasoning perspective, but like nobody wanted to hear it. Because why? It was just like Bitcoin dominance is going to go up. Your alts are about to get crushed. And then we can go higher across the market. Bitcoin needs to lead the market. But I actually think that ETH is going to lead the market here now to new highs. I think ETH Bitcoin is probably more or less bottomed out. I mean, some of these things took.
Let me push back on that though. Why ETH when we've had most of the Ethereum debt buying behind us?
Well, just because ETH has been sufficiently destroyed and has not even hit an all-time high yet this cycle.
Okay.
Like, I think it's going to have its moment now. Bro, the Plasma XPL weekly started at $1.59 or 54 and just closed at 44 cents. Dude.
Man, to everyone that was hedging their venture bags on perps.
You probably got auto deleveraged cooked.
Probably got auto delevered. which is wild. I mean,
HIP3 came out today for Hyperliquid as well.
Right? Dude, tons of action all across the top.
I think all the other perp dexes are they kind of got like, I think in the market's eyes, I think everything but Hyperliquid kind of took a step down in terms of their perception in the market.
It's weird because the perps exchange, the technology itself worked as intended on Hyperliquid the best. It was the only exchange that remained solvent and did not have downtime.
Yeah.
Lighter had downtime. Binance had downtime. I think Aster had downtime.
Yeah.
But as a result of not having downtime, they liquidated more people. And so the people are pissed that there was not downtime because they got ADL'd. There was the liquidation engine continued to run because there was not downtime.
Yeah.
So on Lighter and Binance, they're posting these postmortems about why there was operational downtime and how they're going to recompensate users. But in Hyperliquid, those users just got liquidated. They're not getting compensated. So the users are pissed if you're not essentially taking advantage of the system as it was supposed to happen.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna get Diego. We're gonna get Diego up, and we're gonna hear his takes. He had a banger thread. He's gonna recap it for us, and we're gonna figure out what the hell happened. And I feel like today's stream is pretty much just gonna be. I mean, we've got Diego about kind of like the bigger picture. We've got Omar from Chaos Labs about kind of like the Oracle situation.
And in particular, the lending market situation, particularly on Aave. Chaos Labs, the risk manager for Aave.
Yep.
And one thing that I realized once, Omar kind of reached out to us talking about coming on the show and talking about some of these Oracle situations, I realized, and this is something I had thought about a while ago, but just again remembered, perps dexes are basically lending markets.
Yeah.
These are effectively the same system.
Yeah. Just way more leverage, but there's not actual spot assets being traded when you do perps. That's the key difference.
It's just
You're just
cash
trading
and
paper
it's just
contracts.
paper contracts and just deposits that are just
Yeah.
being shuffled around.
Yeah.
Lenders and borrowers. That's it. That's what makes up these lending markets like Aave. That's what makes up these perps exchanges like Hyperliquid and Lighter.
Yep.
So I think we'll get a bit more detail from Diego about generally kind of the lead up and maybe some more about auto deleveraging and what we're seeing across the broad swath of the market. But then I really want to talk to Omar about particularly this dynamic about it's all lending markets. Perps lending markets are effectively the same thing, and we're just shuffling deposits between users. And how can we do that the most effectively and the most efficiently?
Yeah.
Look, Aave had no issues.
Nope.
No issues. And so you can start to see the systems that are really scaled and built to sustain these sorts of market movements at the scale and the order of magnitude of billions, if not trillions, once we're moving more and more of finance on chain. And I feel like perps exchanges, Hyperliquid performed the best, but it was still just like 90%. Aave, I want to say 99%, if not 100%, no issues.
Yep. It's funny. CMS or Vance just tweeted, "Are you guys still fading Ben Cohen?" And then CMS just tweeted, "Just remembered a ton of these levered perp traders are probably the same guys in Puerto Rico." Like shitting on people for being in Puerto Rico. Like you just went all the way to Puerto Rico, changed your whole lifestyle, avoid taxes, and now you're wrecked. Bro, that's the other thing is that one dude committed suicide, which is absolutely tragic.
Yeah.
That Ukrainian influencer. Yeah. That was really sad. I mean, people lost their shirt. I mean, I put out that tweet and then I got tons of DMs from people who just lost their shirt.
Again, you want to be a cockroach. You just want to survive. You don't want to have to. And now, I mean, we're going to see all kinds of volatility from people trying to make it all back.
Yeah, of course. I mean, people are already piling into I think I saw some thesis piece on SPX 6900 as to why that's going to be what, people are calling for a return to nihilism and memes basically right now.
Yeah.
Because this revenue meta thing went too far and perps just got smoked. I'm going to start farming perp sexes today. I didn't do it for so long, but now that OI got washed and people are probably going to move on from it, I still think it's probably the best opportunity for any sort of airdrop or kind of future, basically just very small delta neutral trading, very light. But I think because everyone got washed out in OI, then I think that, there's a much better opportunity. So yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna get 𝘗𝘳𝘃𝗧𝗓𝗔𝗫𝗃𝗧𝗓 up on the show here, and we're gonna get started. He wrote a great thread about what happened pretty quickly. It's one of the better ones. Obviously, he was with Laura yesterday, I think, or Saturday. So stoked to catch up. We'll bring him up on stage now and let's get started, and we'll have a good chat. Yo, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
You're surviving.
You survived. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank God, dude.
Literally, all my friends think I'm a genius. And in all honesty, I was just I don't want to trade for a bit. I've been trading badly. And then that was really good timing.
Man.
And before we get into it, is it Diogenesis?
No, it's Diogenes. It's a weird Greek name.
Okay.
There you go.
Diogenes.
Yeah.
Well, great piece. Kudos to writing it so quickly and getting it out so that people can start to make sense of what happened. You also kind of explained a little bit of the lead up when it comes to China and the rare earth materials and generally these export controls that are happening. And so we don't want to rehash too much about what you already talked about, but maybe you could just start high level. Do you think that there were signals here? Could we have predicted this if we were paying attention? Did this just catch people off guard? Maybe if we're talking about what happened, let's just start from the beginning.
Yeah. So we can actually start 3 years ago, roughly.
Okay.
When the Biden admin started the chip ban with the Chinese. And that was basically part of, this was around ChatGPT. We kind of wanted to deny the Chinese any hardware advantage, even though for most things, they have a hardware advantage. But luckily for chips, the US and its allies have a significant advantage. So the Chinese have been thinking for like 3 years what their response is going to be. And in China, like the big thing that the media was always talking about was rare earths, which rare earths are like pretty easy to find everywhere else. The refining of rare earths is actually a pain. It's very similar to aluminum. Aluminum is like actually quite easy to mine, but the refining of it is like basically the same as Bitcoin. It's like exporting energy. You just need a place where energy basically costs nothing. And in the case of rare earths, you also need a place where you're fine with basically poisoning all the near environment for like generations. And so the Chinese are experts at being like, yeah, we're fine with, poisoning this valley. We don't really care if that means that we can get this. Whereas in the US, you can't really do that. So I think their response was basically they had been thinking about it for literally like 3 years. This was kind of known. Trump really cared about it a lot. It was like, actually, if you were very much following him, there's a lot of things that he like kind of fixates on, but this is also one of them. So when they announced basically those government controls, it's not, their case is like literally the same as the US, where the US basically said, in interest of national security, a Chinese consumer even in like Beijing that wants to buy an NVIDIA chip needs to get approval from the Department of Defense, or Department of War now, I guess. And they basically made the same thing. Like, say you buy like a tiny component that has 0.10% rare earths. Now you would have to get government approval. So it was pretty clear that Trump wasn't going to take that sitting down. I don't think anyone, though, expected a 100% tariff.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that literally was the worst possible outcome.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to go above 100% on a tariff.
Okay, so when I think about the COVID crash, I think that the COVID crash had such a more significant, like, actual ramifications on the global economy than a headline from Trump. Yet the fallout in the market was almost the same, and I think it's if not worse across the board. It was faster though. It recovered far faster this time, but it was worse in some names. I found it to be absolutely astounding how the top 100 tokens, let's call them, they effectively had like no bid. Like those things went damn near zero. Like how do you kind of reason about what happened there? Like, are we just playing in this game of like completely inflated valuations that are just propped up by market making versus like actually where these things should be valued? Like that lack of bid was terrifying.
I think a good way of thinking about this, Doug wrote a good piece about this, about thinking about these things as just a pool of money. And I like to think about them in like very peer-to-peer terms. Say like, Andy, you and Robbie have a bet. And then Robbie's always paid you. If you've lost, you've always paid him. If you've lost. And then all of a sudden, Robbie loses. He owes you $100. He's like, nah, man, I can only give you $20. Suddenly, you don't know if you want to do a bet with Robbie, right? And vice versa. And that's basically what happened as soon as ADL started. All these market makers were like, hey, how the fuck do I price, my bid? Just the exchange just being like, oh, you know how you should be making, 100% on this trade? Nah, that's too much. You're not allowed to make that amount. So that's the kind of environment that, like, sure, you needed it to like save the solvency of these exchanges, but it meant that all the market makers were like, how do I price not knowing when I'm allowed to exit? Like suddenly the rules of the game changed midway, and they had, no one's had to price that much risk on so much volume. Like it was like, I think $40-50 billion of volume in 20 minutes. That's unheard of.
I think that is a really interesting framing and a really important realization for people to have, where this is a difference between spot markets and perpetuals markets. If you're trading on perpetuals, these paper contracts, you need the counterparty. you can't just buy the asset and hold the asset. And so if you're going long, you need a short, and if you're going short, you need a long. And you can, whether either side, whichever side you take, you need the other side in order to keep making money. And if the other side loses, you can only make as much as the other side is willing to lose. And effectively,
or able
to lose. Exactly right. And the other side ran out of money. And so even though you were in profit, your profits were capped by how much the other side was willing and able to lose.
Yeah.
Let me ask, maybe, yeah, please.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask in the form of a question here. Was it that the other side, did they just take their money off the table and they weren't willing to risk it, or did they lose it and it was taken from them?
Yeah. So I think there's like an interesting way of thinking about this is recently perps have been the really hot thing. But the way that perps are treated given their risk is very different in crypto. If either of you told me on this podcast that you had a diversified portfolio, but it's only options, I would be like, what the actual hell does that mean? Like a month can pass and you have no money. But perps are functionally the same thing in crypto because of how volatile the market is. But people were kind of like, oh no, it's like the same thing. Like there are people that'll bid an asset on perps 1x, right? Like it's basically like considered the same as spot. And to your point, like people just kind of were like, yeah, this is just like spot, but better. I get 3 times, the exposure I would normally get. But in cases like this, it's just not what happens. Like to your original question about what happened, I think there were a lot of people, we had just reached a new all-time high. A lot of people that are more retail are like, as soon as we reach an all-time high, the back testing says that, 80% of the time we rocket up 20 to 30%. Therefore, I can it's some Alameda math of like, we'll never go to the previous all-time low. So I can 10x long and I'll be fine. And I think that like wasn't a massive amount of people, but the fact that Trump also announced this, he announced it at market close, I think to not hurt the US market. But then that meant like all the crypto market was like, wait, how significant is this? And then we looked at the normal market and then we're like, oh shit, the normal market is closed. Like there's no frame of reference for actually how bad this is. And so then the people at the top of the book that were levered insanely long just got blown out. And then they've pushed the price down. Market makers didn't know how to price everything. So then people that were at like medium, not as risky positions, their stop losses started to get hit. And then it just kept on going from there.
Dude, it was crazy how we've been in this perps farming meta for like the last, I don't know, whatever month, let's call it, when it really got hot. And I think I saw a tweet from like Moon Overlord. It was like, they really convinced everyone to start farming on like points on perp dexes with like leverage neutral, like delta neutral trades, which, those still have risk. Like you can't, like in events like this, the longs got wiped and then anybody who had shorts had their position auto deleveraged. So it was like kind of like you got screwed. I think that the perp dexes are going to airdrop everyone who got screwed over in this event, at least the pre-TGE ones, because that's kind of how Hyperliquid did it. And I think that's the only way to like do it. But yeah, it's like the whole, like, I've been avoiding perps farms because I'm like, I've been there. Like I've been in the trenches at 3 a.m. looking at the accounts, like managing stop losses. And it's just like not a sustainable life path for me. Like it's just not how I'm currently living. But now I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to go and finally deposit into perp dexes and across the board, a couple of them, but maybe 2 or 3 of them, and really get active because OI got wiped so hard. And I highly doubt we see another event like this for at least another, it's going to be probably a year, if not 2, this scale. And so I think it's actually like a lot of the risk and a lot of the appetite for perps farming, points farming is like gone down significantly. So it's like 2 nice kind of like things happen where the risk, I think, of this event happening again has gone down. And then the competition, I think, in terms of OI has also gone down.
I would just push back on that a little bit, but get your opinion on it, because now that open interest has essentially been cut in half across the board, wouldn't that mean more volatility, not less?
That depends. So what I like to think, the way I like to think about this is that perps tend to be quite mercenary capital. I think a lot of the OI was people trying to front run, especially on alts. Most of the OI was people trying to front run news about DATs or like the price impact of DATs or like some kind of squeeze around perps relating to DATs. It was all DAT related. And so most of that you can think of as being purely extractive because perps do affect price. Just because, you know, if you're a decent market maker, sure, you're not hedging out all of your positions. That's incredibly inefficient. And like, at least as they happen. But eventually, you know, if you're net long or net short 1,000 BTC, you probably don't want to be long or short that amount, depending on how big your book is, and you end up hedging with spot. So I think that's a big thing to think about is like a lot of these kind of mercenary traders are out of the market and they're not going to be able to front run these people that are more long-term biased. So that's one thing. But to your point also, yes, in theory, it could be more volatile. But I think because that type of participant has been eliminated, that type of participant, I think, also trades a lot more actively. Like, you know, an average perp trader can have like $1,000 and trade 100,000 in a month. So I think the volatility will decrease a decent amount. You also have to consider the fact that like half of the OI is Athena right now or something like that.
Yeah. Well, also just that the open interest on centralized exchanges is again a different participant than the open interest on pre-TGE perps platforms. Those are two different
100%. That's
people.
true.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So where do you think we go from here, man? Like, what is the, you know, we got this, you know, we've been getting tipped off all weekend about people blowing up. And yeah, like, what do you think the ramifications of this are? Like, what, like, if you had to predict where we are in terms of like either price or sentiment or like, you know, bankruptcies, liquidations, et cetera, like where do we go from here to the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think and a lot of traders have talked about this, but we're in a weird spot in that in theory, everything's doing good, but crypto's kind of lagging. Like gold's pumping, the stock market's been doing pretty good, and crypto is relatively flat. Even BTC, which is this cycle at least been pretty strong. It's like BTC and crime tokens are what have done well. And so I think like people are like unsure if BTC will catch a bid, even though mainly because like, a lot of the DATs have stopped buying. And I think it'll be interesting to see where the MNAVs of the DATs after this close, or sorry, on the next open. I don't think it's, oh, well, yeah, it's open right now. So probably we'll find out soon where that settles. I don't think that the cycle's over at all. Like, I don't think this is like an Alameda style crash. And it's like, okay, you know, this is just the begin, or like a Terra Luna style crash. And like, this is just the beginning. I think we probably keep going up until like early next year at the very least. And then from there, I would like reevaluate. From there, I think there's like potential for stuff to do bad, but like credit market's strong. A lot of things seem strong. We're about to cut rates. Like there's no real reason for crypto to dump.
Our boy Benjamin Cohen's finally calling for new ETH all-time highs. The profit, the market profit is getting ready for an all-time high.
I have too much exposure to ETH.
Why do you think this time is different? Like, this is not a Luna FTX style crash out that is going to, you know, take lots of time and energy to rebuild.
So I guess I kind of skipped over in your original question, Andy, about the kind of inferred market maker stuff. What I've heard is that a lot of market makers got hurt pretty badly. A lot of like larger, you know, 9-figure ones lost probably, you know, 10 to 20% of their book. I've heard from multiple people that Jump lost, you know, $1 billion, which, you know, you kind of arbitrarily think of Jump as like a massive corporate. They only manage $9 billion. So that's actually, if that's true, that's a pretty massive hit that they took. I I think that like the annoying thing that you never want, you know, a podcast guest to say is like, I have no idea when this kind of stuff will happen. Because you have to think about the incentives for these guys. All of these market makers have insane amounts of credit behind them. Like normally they're 2 to 3x levered just on credit. And then you have to consider they're like, you know, potentially 3x levered on their book. So they're potentially operating their books at like functionally 10x leverage. So if they admit publicly like, oh yeah, no, this was like a hard hit, but we'll be fine. Suddenly all their creditors can call them up and be like, hey, you know, I want my money back. And that can ruin some of these firms. I think it is different in that most of these firms probably can make it back and be fine. But there's probably, I know at least there's something that's not getting a lot of attention, which is that market makers have different API endpoints for these markets, especially ones that are top of book, which just means like they're market making all the time. A lot of those endpoints during the crash just failed completely for like 20, 30 minutes, and the 20, 30 minutes that mattered. And so given that happened, all of these market makers suddenly couldn't manage their book. And a lot of these top of book, medium-sized market makers I've talked to like 4 or 5 that are down 75, 85%. So if any of, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait. Okay. So some lost 10 or 20%, but you're saying that other market makers lost 80%, you think?
Yeah. No, I know for a fact at least 4 or 5 like 8-figure, mid to large 8-figure shops lost 80, 85% plus.
Wow.
Yeah.
So okay, so it's not like hey, I lost $8 billion of your money. You're not going to get it back. I'm going through bankruptcy, and then this contagion is going to spill over to stable coins and to other exchanges. It's like a lot of the players, whatever profit that they may have made over the last couple years, they may have just got a lot of that fat trimmed off, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I think the like FTX was unique in that if you think about like the worst type of contagion is almost always an exchange, because an exchange is also how like other people, like when FTX went down, I was at Amber Group, which is a Asia-based market maker, and the market maker had, you know, I think half a yard, so $500 million on the exchange that they were using to do the delta neutral trade at the time. And so then, and they were levered, right? So an exchange is a perfect example of like something that creates systemic risk. A lot of these market makers, sure, they might tank the chart for a bit because suddenly they have no money to bid. Sure, they might make a lot of their creditors go bankrupt, but it's like their creditors aren't like, you know, there aren't these big credit conglomerates like there were last cycle with like, well, I guess Nexo's still around, but like BlockFi, Celsius.
Yeah, we just don't have that same level of leverage in the market right now. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great. I mean, DATs, people are worried about DATs, but like even still, that's like Ethereum DATs are just now getting into like raising debt via convertible notes and issuing those notes. Like I think BTBS just finally said like, look, we're trying to do 100 million, right? But people are worried about that. But that doesn't even compare to like the level of this margin lending loop that we had last
yeah, and to your point about the convertible debt's not convertible to ETH, it's convertible to the shares, right? So in theory, there's like, it depends a lot on how these DATs are set up, but in theory, a lot of these DATs can have their debt called on them and still not cause any negative impact on the price. And I think like a lot of people mention like MicroStrategy for that reason. If you look at the convertible, what percentage of their notes are convertible versus not convertible, the non-convertible notes, or the notes that they would have to like pay out in cash instead of paying out in shares, their liquidation price in like 4 years is like 5K. So I think MicroStrategy will be like fine.
Yeah, I mean they're like kind of like the Trojan horse right now, and if they're fine, then we should be good. So do you think that books for alts will be thinner now? Like, or is it really going to change? Or
I mean, that's a good question. I think there's like two parts to that. One is like, say there's a market maker that went down. I think it was pretty public because they were on Hyperliquid. They got zeroed. That market makes like Resolve and a few other tokens.
Was that the 𝘗𝘂𝘃 guys?
Yeah. And so if they went fully down, contractually, the inventory they were supposed to maintain is now like not on the book. So the book might be a little bit thinner. At the same time, market makers, I think there's a misconception in general that market makers are like what bids a token. Market makers are kind of just their contracts basically say like provide V2 style, Uniswap style liquidity across all the exchanges, and that's it. Like they just manage inventory. They're not really responsible. I mean, at the start, it's different because they have different ways of determining how the price should settle. Because like you can kind of think of it as like there's like almost a bonding curve at the start to set what the price should be, and then they start V2. But I don't think that it'll impact alts as badly as some people think, and it might actually be positive for a lot of alts, especially like stuff like Fartcoin and these kind of things that like kind of was insane that there were people bidding perps on it, and that most people, the way they got exposure to these meme coins was perps. That's probably net positive that so much of the OI got wiped.
Do you think the next, like I'm seeing that the next meta is going to be like return to memes and this type of stuff. Like this revenue meta got too far. People got too entrenched into wanting to farm these perp stexes. Kind of come to a close here. What do you think? What sector do you think responds the best to what happened in the market, or is it kind of the same structure as it was before?
I mean, I think that like there's, I think memes are like very transparently zero sum. Like a lot of people like know that now. You can kind of argue that derivatives aren't, and in the derivative space, probably prediction markets. I can see a couple CEOs doing laps of like, hey, if you had held a prediction market, will ETH go to this price or will BTC go to this price? You would have made more money than if you had been on perps because of ADL, etc. And then that's functionally an option. So then options also could potentially get a lot of attention. But options, I think prediction markets are more interesting to me because like there's a cap of how much money you can make. Options, the same exact thing can happen where like, the counterparty just doesn't have enough money.
Yeah, you just get
so wiped. I think it's like, yeah, but I think it'll still stay around derivatives in my opinion.
Yeah. Guys, that was awesome. Thanks for joining us. And what a weekend. What a freaking weekend. We got Omar from Chaos Labs up next. He's talking about some of the Oracle stuff that happened. So this is a whole nother side of the story here, that we're going to kind of, unfold. So thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Really interesting. Thanks, man. We'll see you next time.
Alrighty.
Wow. Great. I mean, just you kind of like have this intuition that these sorts of things are happening, but to hear about the mechanics behind it, very, very insightful.
That guy's thread was pretty wild.
It was a great overview. Yeah. And there's tons of factors, but ultimately he really pieced them together quite well. One after another. Let's keep it rolling. We got Omar from Chaos Labs, who I think is going to provide a little bit more of a technical insight into how some of these markets work. Obviously, the lads learned about ADL over the weekend, but we're going to also learn about oracles. So let's get Omar loaded up, and we can send him in right now.
Dude, they're saying that the value of the airdrop for Monad cards is going to be, Kalshi's pricing it at over 100 grand, 80%. Oh my God.
Pretty sure you have a Monad card.
Yeah, I think we both do.
Pretty sure I have a Monad
I think the Rollup might. I tried to send to my friends, and I tried to set up the Rollup account and Rollup Ventures, and I don't think they let it fly.
Interesting. Keeping a close eye on those Monad cards.
The
Omar,
sibling.
let's bring Omar up
The
because
sibling.
we've got a lot. We've
They
got
were
a lot to
definitely
chat
protecting
about.
the sibling.
Oh, yeah.
Omar, what's up, man?
Omer, all good. How are you
Omer.
guys doing?
Omer.
How's the week starting?
Dude, we can.
This
We're
guy.
just surviving, man. We're just surviving.
Big weekend over
Okay.
here. How you doing?
We're doing good. It was like not the most relaxing weekend, but all things considered, I think it could have been a lot worse. So yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
as a global risk management firms, you guys certainly had your hands full.
Yes. I think like everyone was all hands on deck this weekend.
Yeah.
What is the state of affairs? Were you guys in the office? Was it a war room? Did you guys all just kind of like congregate and just everyone? It's all hands on deck. Just what was it panic? What was the vibe in the room?
Yeah, I mean, not panic. I think like the firm is really kind of built for moments like this, and during these tail events is when we're like measured the most. And to be honest, like the whole deleveraging and the liquidations that happened, it happened so quickly, right? Like in the span of an hour was the vast majority of at least 19 billion liquidations. In reality, it's more. So you really need to kind of prepare like ahead of time and have systems that can like react in real time, give you a good understanding and picture of what's happening, and adjust accordingly. So we were definitely in a war room, definitely online. I think the big headline was Aave, but we also work with Jupiter and GMX and EtherFi and Renzo, DYDX, and just a lot more. But kind of weathered the storm. I think DeFi did a lot better than CeFi over the weekend.
Would you say that is it a fair statement to say that there was Oracle attacks? Or is it more of like, maybe you could walk us through kind of like why that term is like used a lot, but maybe may not be exactly what happened here.
Yeah, like so I think like Oracle attacks, they definitely happen. And I think there's like kind of there's two ways you can like look at like I guess an Oracle account or attack. One is like from the exchange's like perspective, where someone is explicitly and maliciously trying to move the price of an Oracle in order to take advantage of a system. The other, and this is why I say there's two ways, is there's like some type of market dislocation, which is what we saw over the weekend. The funny thing is both of them can have the same effect and like devastation on the protocol, and in this case, so on users, like specifically on Binance. So I don't know. I know there are like rumors. I haven't seen anything substantiated that this was like a coordinated attack. What I think is more just like not a super deep understanding of the best way to price these type of assets.
And would you say that given the volatility, did these systems perform as they're intended? Like these ADL things, they're supposed to happen. Like systems aren't supposed to have downtime, but for the most part, would you say that these systems worked as intended?
Yeah, so like if we're talking about some of the dexes like Hyperliquid where ADL was triggered, yes. Like this wasn't like a surprise. I think it's just kind of like in the fine print, and it was certainly, I think, the largest scale of like auto deleveraging that ever kicked in on a decentralized exchange. But this is how the systems are designed. So they performed as intended. I think a lot of users were not aware of what happens and like during these tail events. But it's really kind of the only way to go today when you have perp dexes.
The gang learns about ADL in real time.
Yeah.
Let's all study ADL after it's like Doug from Fogo had a great thread that went viral about ADL, and it's just like even from our perspective, we didn't have any liquidations. We don't even use perps really. I mean, I'm actually just telling Rob I'm actually going to start going on delta neutral low strategies on the pre-TGE perps dexes now, because I was like, dude, this is way too crowded over the last like month or two. But now like OI has been wiped. I think those people are going to be mentally tarnished from like wanting to even touch those apps again, which trust me, I've been there. Luckily that happened to me in like 2017, not now. But I think that opportunity is growing. Kind of that aside, I'm thinking about like the post-mortem here for DeFi, right? Chaos Labs manages risk oracles. You guys have some really interesting kind of like risk parameter technology, AI-based technologies. From the Chaos Labs perspective, like what would be the post-mortem from this event? Should we expect fallout? I don't think there's bad debt anywhere. Like from your perspective, from Chaos Labs, like what is the post-mortem of this entire weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thesis that we've had like as a company for many years is we believe like the world is coming on chain, specifically capital that was previously reserved for traditional finance and traditional rails. As such, things are going to get more sophisticated. And like looking into that future, it's clear to us is like you can't really just look at price as a single data point. You need to understand for anything that's tokenized, like what are the proof of reserves, or how is this thing backed kind of like off chain? And then from risk, there are just other data points that you want to enrich those feeds with. And we knew that like an Oracle is not just going to be like an infrastructure provider or like an Oracle network. It's going to have all these other attributes of understanding context and being able to kind of transmit that clear, actionable data pointed signal to the applications that are consuming it. So I think what we saw on the weekend is what happens when you don't have a smart Oracle. You just have a single data point. In the case of Binance, it seems that it was just like pricing USDE based on the mid of the book in those markets. And like, unfortunately, like the fallout of that. And I think that we're already talking kind of like to the largest institutions, and we're just seeing that trend, right? Like you can't just depend on secondary DEX market liquidity to price billion-dollar markets, because there will be adverse consequences during times of stress.
Maybe to push back on like the idea and just to get a better understanding, I saw a tweet that was like, oh, is USDE basically just pegged to $1 on Aave no matter what happens? And like, that is not sustainable. That's not correct either. But then in your tweet, you know, you're saying that this price oracle is a risk oracle, and that USDE was always over collateralized, continued to function properly, processed the mint and burns, and thus the Chaos Labs methodology saved about $4.5 billion worth of positions on Aave, and then, you know, thus saved users about $180 million in liquidation penalties, and then obviously all the, you know, downstream that comes with that. So like, if someone's to say to you guys, well, USD is just pegged to $1 on Aave, of course, you know, nothing went wrong. Like, what is the proper like kind of like response there?
Yeah, so I would say the rebuttal is it's not pegged to $1. I think in this case it's pegged to USDT. So that is the peg. And I think basically like the reason why we had high conviction on this methodology for right now is we want to avoid exactly what happened on Friday. So we wanted to avoid a scenario in which there's no problem in redemptions. The fundamental pricing should be $1, but there is a temporary dislocation or wick on a secondary market, right? And the way that USD is used in Aave, in conjunction like with Pendle and PT tokens, just broadly across the industry, is looping, right? So these are like kind of highly levered, like tight loops, and they're very sensitive to those fluctuations. So basically what we want to get to is like, hey, if this is just like a temporary market deviation, proof of reserves is working. You can see the Ethereum deposits like on chain, everything is fine, but the price moves in a curved DEX or in a centralized exchange, which is used as the data source for the Oracle. We don't want to liquidate billions of dollars of positions. So that's the end goal. And like kind of like looking forward to where we want to be as an industry, for any type of tokenized asset that you're using, any type of stablecoin, you need to have a proof of reserves, right? That's the ideal. Otherwise, you're just there's counterparty risk and you're trusting the issuer. Athena is actually like on the forefront of that. I think that since going live with Chaos Labs proof of reserves, I think it's weekly. Some of the biggest like asset issuers don't publish reserves at all, or it's on a much like wider cadence. But the ideal end state is that the proof of reserves and the fundamental pricing and the secondary market pricing, they're all connected, and your Oracle is just smart and can adjust to what's happening in the market.
And so we don't typically think of Chaos Labs as an Oracle, but in some of your posts, you describe how a price Oracle is effectively a risk Oracle. And when we're thinking about a global risk management system, we're pricing risk, and we're thinking about how to structure risk and convey prices that can accurately portray the type of risk environment that is currently going on. Do you think of Chaos Labs as an Oracle, or maybe you can just help to illuminate what the difference is between oracles and risk engines?
Yeah, so 100%. Almost exactly a year ago, we launched Chaos Labs Oracles. It's the fastest growing Oracle in the market. We have price oracles, risk oracles, proof of reserve oracles. So Jupiter, for example, Jupiter Perps, every single price uses the Chaos Labs price oracle. Aave uses risk oracles. and 𝘰𝘪𝘴, the whole cash product, and the lending behind that is powered by chaos price oracles, risk oracles, and proof of reserve oracles. So definitely like that is like one of our main products. Go ahead.
And just to double click into this, there's combinations of these things. There's price oracles and there's risk oracles. Like let's use Aave as a primary example. The Chaos Labs risk oracle works in tandem with the Chainlink price oracle. Is that correct? Could you explain how these things work together?
Yeah, so I mean, we can integrate with any oracle. So we have some customers that take everything. We have some customers that are like, we're going to use chaos price oracles, risk oracles, and proof of reserves. If you have another oracle and you want to use our risk oracle, we can do that too, even though we don't necessarily recommend it depending on the use case. A risk oracle is, for example, like liquidation thresholds or interest rates. These are parameters that need to be streamed in real time. Funding rates in the case of like perps, or price impact if you're on 𝘬𝘪𝘵 or GMX. They update in real time as a function of the market. So they need to be written on chain and consumed by the applications. It's not necessarily price. So that is like a risk oracle, where a price is just like, what is the price? But I think what we're seeing more and more is that these things are intertwined, right? So a lot of times the price might depend on a bunch of other things that are happening on chain. Like, is this backed? Do we see the deposits? Are they publishing a proof of reserves? And I think the main difference in how we see our oracle versus everything else is that a lot of oracle providers today like to think of themselves as infra players. They say, we don't know, like we connect to these APIs, maybe these market makers, we don't have an opinion on like this data. What we can kind of promise you is that this data was emitted from this API. Where we come and say is like, guys, we're managing billions, maybe hundreds of billions of kind of notional dependent on this data. We need to do a little bit better than just like blindly, passing on a sex price. So our data, our kind of oracles are smart in the sense that they have algorithms and kind of our risk engine behind it. And that ultimately affects like what's coming out on the other end.
Yeah. So USDE, in a world like, in 2020, we had the DAI event with DAI, the stablecoin. Had USDE not been working with Aave and Chaos Labs in this way that they did, and just did like a Uniswap TWAP or a sex average of like 5 sexes, we could have had a really, really bad fallout from USDE on Aave with like just that liquidations that you guys protected, or am I missing something?
No, I mean, that's like correct. I think it's like the question is, in absence of this pricing methodology, what would have been in use?
Yeah.
So typically what most oracles do is they do some form of volume weighted average. So they say, hey, let's connect to all of the centralized exchanges and we'll attribute a larger weight to the markets that are doing the most volume, because that is like a proxy for the truth. It's typically Binance is like the highest volume.
Yeah, always.
And like during this kind of dislocation of the price, there was crazy volume on that market. So that's typically like what's done. And because these markets are looped effectively, like in Aave, for example, they're in E mode. You didn't need to go to 65 cents to cause the massive liquidations and the cascades. So it could have moved 5 cents or 7 cents, and that would have been
enough, right?
Similar to what we saw with USDC, right? When the SVB collapsed.
Yeah, because E mode it allows you to do that aggressive looping, because you're essentially assuming that the collateral and the debt are basically going to maintain the same peg effectively.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what lessons do you think DeFi learned from this? Because there's always a lesson. There's always multiple. I mean, it seems like you guys did a lot of things right. I'm sure you probably have some things that you could have done better or that you may have changed, but maybe more broadly or, within Chaos Labs, like what is the lessons here for DeFi?
Yeah. So I think that like, pricing USDE as USDT 1-to-1 was like, in retrospect, the right decision for Friday evening. But I think more people are just becoming aware of like what a proof of reserve oracle is, what a risk oracle is. I'll say that while it worked on Friday, this is not endgame, right? Like what we would like to do as an industry is eliminate counterparty risk. And the real way to do that is by having a real-time proof of reserve. So again, Athena are the most advanced in this. The largest stablecoins provide no proof of reserve. And if you don't know what's happening like off-chain, just as a risk manager and application, you're taking on the counterparty risk. So as a protocol, you're taking it on, or your users are, or some combination of both of those. And I think for like protocol founders, they need to like be adamant in requiring this from assets that they want to onboard. And I think it's just basically smarter oracles, right? Will just make everything more robust moving forward. So those are the two takeaways, I think, for us.
I get one last question on the Athena situation. You guys are, in tandem with Aave, working with Athena and help to establish that peg to USDT. On Binance, there was this separate situation where USDE and Athena had negotiated kind of a special relationship with Binance. What do you have to say about, kind of their risk engine and what they were doing? Is there a situation where you see Chaos Labs risk oracle becoming embedded into Binance that could have prevented the situation? Generally, about these kind of special arrangements that some protocols have with these exchanges, is that a good thing? Does it help prevent some of these things, but ultimately it led to collapse? What do you make of those arrangements?
Yeah, so I'll say that I can't like give specific like names, but like 100%, like what you're seeing in the industry right now is a convergence between centralized like CeFi, DeFi, TradFi. The whole world wants to utilize like the rails that we've built as an industry, whether it's stablecoin yields, crypto-backed loans, just access to 24/7 trading, FX, and there's a lot of complexity. Like we've built a lot as an industry over the past 5 years. So these exchanges, these fintechs, these neobanks, these institutions, they recognize that. We'll be announcing a lot of exciting stuff like over the next weeks and months. But as an industry, yeah, I mean, this is what it's built for. Like the risk oracle should protect users regardless of whether you are DeFi native or you're a centralized exchange or you are on a big centralized exchange that's offering other crypto products to your users.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool.
When it comes to actually thinking about what happens next, Jump and there's this firm and that market maker, and there's some people have taken some haircuts here. But I think like what's important is that the core infrastructure that is DeFi has remained strong, and like it seems like we're not going to have any sort of like deep fallout or contagion from this, at least not yet. We'll see kind of what happens. But for a variety of reasons, this is quite different than like FTX and like Genesis and Voyager and all these things. Primarily because there's a lot less of this credit and lending happening in like the opaque way that it did in the past. In a situation where we're looking ahead as a DeFi user, as somebody who uses Aave, as somebody who participates in whether it's points farming, stablecoin yield, etc. To me, this feels like a really strong test of like Lindy for a lot of the top protocols, and would probably encourage future deposits. Like I think we can look back at this at least in some capacity, and you mentioned the takeaways, and I think institutions could look at some of those and just kind of what happened and be like, wow, like this system held up, like it didn't just break. Like I think if this happened in 2020, 2021, we would be in a way different situation. So like when you're looking ahead from your personal perspective as well as Chaos's perspective, like do you see anything materially changing in the DeFi landscape as far as like how things are done, as far as like risk parameters, as far as liquidity dynamics? Kind of what do you expect to materially change, let's say from now to the end of the year and perhaps, next year?
A few quick ones. I think exchanges are going to kind of move fast to kind of partner with different like risk partners, oracle providers to better understand how to price assets on their exchange. I don't know the exact number, but I think that Binance is making users whole, and that's to the order of like several hundred million. So obviously, like there is a price for getting this wrong, and it's something that's like being recognized. And just generally, I want to say that like, yes, it was good. Like, again, it could have been like super black swan on Friday, and this conversation would be very different. But the amount of innovation that we're seeing in the space is exponential. And with that, so are the risk vectors. So while it was an amazing, I think, like really like demonstration of how far we've come as an industry, this stuff is always ongoing. And the applications need to stay at the kind of the edge of the innovation and make sure that these new products are also secure. So it's a really good data point, obviously amazing case study, but we continue. We continue.
Omer, thanks for joining us, man. I'm sure you're slammed today, so I appreciate your time. And yeah, I'm sure the Slack chat is firing. So
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the busyness, and we appreciate your work.
Yeah.
I think the entire Athena community is probably extremely grateful for just the outcome here. And as you said, right, this is just one data point. We can build on it. There's still some things to learn and get better, but that's the process.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Andy.
Appreciate you keeping our system
guys.
solvent.
Thanks so much.
Next time.
Bye, man.
See ya. Bye.
Cheers, buddy. Alrighty, well, I mean, those guys saved Athena. That's good. I mean, Athena saved themselves. They know what they're doing. But I mean, without that setup, I mean,
I think it's interesting that the specially negotiated relationship they had with Binance did not save them. It was this more thoughtful risk management approach by the on-chain partners that ultimately saved them from a real DPEG scenario.
Well, Binance is paying back $283 million to their users as a result of this.
And if that would have happened in an on-chain system, probably wouldn't have repaid users. Where would if it happened on Aave?
There's no. I mean,
there's an insurance fund.
I think BNB Chain just airdropped.
Likely.
BNB Chain just airdropped $45 million to anybody who's traded meme coins on BNB Chain in the last month. Just quick stimmy. Yeah. All right, guys, I think we're going to roll into Rumor Mill. We'll be right back. And then we've got another two awesome guests, Andrew from Recall and Vance and Michael from Framework to end us out. Long stream today. We'll be right back with Rumor Mill. We've got some absolutely spicy DMs to show and to talk about. So we'll be right back. Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Rumor Mill. Today's is probably the wildest Rumor Mill, even though we've only done one other. A few trading firms have been hit hard. We are hearing that 𝘗𝘬𝘃 got hit for at least 20 million and is winding down. And we have got tipped off that Jump has lost $1 billion in Friday's fallout. I've also been tipped off that there has been a $400 million wipeout from a private whale. A lot of these whales being kind of like not public and you don't really hear about them. So these two funds are the ones that were pretty certain got hit really hard. And I think 𝘗𝘬𝘃 got washed out to the point that they're going to have to wind down completely. And I think Jump lost 20% of their book, about, maybe 10 to 20% of their book in this crash. And I think it's really bad.
I just want to give a shout out to our friends at Wrecked. This segment of Rumor Mill is presented by Wrecked. $1 billion in losses. 𝘗𝘬𝘃 getting zeroed out completely on Hyperliquid.
Yep.
So shout out to Wrecked, who sponsored this weekend's crash out on the markets.
Yep. Man, no, I mean, so I think this is just like the beginning of what's going to come out. I think there's probably a lot of market makers that got hit for about 10 or 20% of their book. And then a significant amount got hit for a couple probably got hit for like 70 to 80%.
Yep.
I put out this tweet yesterday, right, on my page that has gone absolutely viral. And I've just been getting hit up nonstop about kind of like who these market makers were, or kind of like what's happening. So this is the answer, guys. Two large trading firms were liquidated to zero. One of them was 𝘗𝘬𝘃. I don't think Jump was obviously liquidated to zero, but they definitely lost $1 billion. And look, guys, the idea here is that they owned a book of top 100 market cap tokens in some capacity. They were long or short, mostly longs. And effectively what they did was called cross margin. And so when you cross margin, you basically take, let's say you take ETH and then you borrow against your ETH position to go long on SOL. And then you can then borrow again against your ETH and SOL, your ETH long or your ETH spot plus your SOL long to go long on another asset. And so you can just keep looping these strategies such that you will make a ton if the market goes in your direction. But if any of your bigger collateral assets, like those longs, start getting hit hard, you just instantly get wiped down. And basically, we believe that 𝘗𝘬𝘃 and Jump were effectively forced sellers of assets that were collateralized against each other in this cross margin fashion. And they became forced sellers effectively at market prices due to this either the auto deleveraging phenomenon, which is when exchanges force you to close your position because effectively there's nobody to take the other side, or just because they had liquidations hit and they basically became forced market sellers. So look, we're not trying to step on anybody's toes here. This is obviously you don't want to be in this position, and we feel for anybody or firms or people that lost in this. But guys, I think Rumor Mill is pretty freaking hot right now, and we're pretty confident that 𝘗𝘬𝘃 is going down and that they're going to be signing off. And we're pretty confident that Jump has lost a significant amount of capital.
One thing that is important to just recognize as part of these market makers trading on perps exchanges and using cross margin is that they also have agreements with projects, and they can hedge, they can kind of use these other perps exchanges, their other collateral, as a means of balancing their book. But when they get zeroed out and liquidated completely, it means that they can't fulfill their market making obligations to the projects that they have contractual relationships with. So there's projects out there, we're not going to name names, but they have contracts with 𝘗𝘬𝘃. And so if you're one of those projects, you got a contract with 𝘗𝘬𝘃, you might want to make some phone calls. You should be asking questions. I think Jump also, as we know, has contractual relationships with projects where they do the market making and they hold a balance of these token supplies on their books. They didn't get lost. They didn't get wiped completely. But again, this is going to affect their broader market making obligations within the rest of the industry. So we have to take this into account. And I think there are projects out there. We're going to find this out as the situation develops. And these are situations to take into account. Do some research. If you're holding alts on spot or you have markets here, take into account whether or not these are some of the market makers that are making these altcoin markets. And you're on mute.
I don't think that the ramifications of this are going to cause contagion and like over the top crash out.
No, but thin books, thin liquidity.
But I think that, you know, I think we're going to have more and more of these names come out. And I think that, yeah, that's the reality. So guys, that is the rumor mill for today.
One thing you just to close out here, one thing you mentioned that I don't think we spent too much time on, but is going to be a developing story, is that there are 4 to 5 other large scale market makers. We're talking $1 billion in assets that is, again, looped and leveraged to multiple billions of dollars, who also got not completely wiped, but 75 to 85% wiped. And this, again, we're going to find these names out. You know, there's different ways to describe this, bodies rising to the surface. We're going to hear these names. And, you know, as a trader and an investor, it's important to get out in front of this. Also as builders and, you know, stakeholders of organizations, it's important to take prerogative and deal with these situations proactively. Yep.
Wild. Guys, rumor mill is hot. Block is absolutely hot. We've got more coming for you later in the week. Thanks for being a part of this segment. We're going to be right back, and then we'll get cracking on with our next guest, and we're going to scroll the feed a bit. Thanks, guys. See you soon. All right. Well, so this is a good tweet. Guys, welcome back, fresh off of rumor mill. So Jordy Alexander says, I'll say this much: exchanges that have tokens should start prioritizing their users instead of their token holders, or they will quickly be left with neither. We have a long way to go on the road from casino to serious financial infrastructure. And instead of posting how much this vault or that one made for its users, I'm suggesting about how to address the obvious fundamental issues with market structure for those individuals wrecked from participating in these flawed markets. I know there's many of you out there. Stay strong. You can absolutely rebuild stronger if you learn the right lessons right now. And Rob, I think this is kind of like this tweet was, I think, directed at Hyperliquid because HLP Vault hit like a massive win.
Yeah, made $43 million.
On behalf of Hyperliquid traders getting auto deleveraged out of their positions and either taking losses or not getting the right amount of payout for the risk that they were taking on their positions. And yeah, I mean, you know, this is kind of like, so that's Hyperliquid's negative side. But then I think all the other side was that, like, the other perp dexes, they had fundamental technology problems.
Almost all of them had downtime.
The vault people lost money. People in like lighter LLP lost money and the traders also got auto deleveraged.
Right.
So it was like kind of the worst of all scenarios for most of the other perp dexes. Hyperliquid had a bad situation where at least HLP won, but that's been the standard that Hyperliquid's done. Is like the 𝘱𝘭𝘫 Oracle exploit, dude. They were like, no, we're gonna roll this back and make sure HLP is safe, right, or whatever it is. So I think like at the end of the day, Hyperliquid has shown its cards. Like here's what matters to us. It's the HLP depositors, and for better or for worse, that's what they've signaled to the market.
I think there's some nuance to this argument here, and I love Jordy. I think he's an amazing guy, and I think he's got great takes, and obviously has done very well. But I think there's a question to ask here, which is that yes, no argument whether they should be prioritizing their users. The question is which users. Are you prioritizing the users that are deposited into these liquidity vaults, or are you prioritizing the users that are gambling on perps? And I think you have to ask, when you're thinking about if it's one or the other, obviously you want to try to prioritize both sets of these users. These are ultimately both contributing to the platform. But which one of these sets of users is stickier? And I think that's going to be the LPs. The traders, these perp traders, are primarily mercenary capital. They're moving along, they're effectively gambling. Maybe they're doing some hedging or delta neutral strategies. But I think for the most part, the LPs are going to be the stickier liquidity. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that is some of the nuance that's missing from Jordy's argument here, because both of these are users on the platform. This was just one of those freak scenarios where it's up to the exchange like Hyperliquid to choose which set of users they're prioritizing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, the thing is, without the HLP vault, right, in this scenario, the platform, like that is what the entire platform runs on. So if that thing goes down, then the whole exchange is screwed, basically. Because you've got like these liquidity providers effectively saying, we're going to take the opposite side of the traders to make money, and we will be like this kind of like this like liquidity backstop layer for the platform. And I think that's kind of like it's a non-negotiable in the way, in the sense that you can't screw those people over, because if they lose trust in depositing in that vault, then they'll never deposit in the vault anymore, sure, and then the entire platform is screwed. You
can say the same thing for the alternative group. You can't screw over your users, or else they're going to go trade somewhere else. And so Hyperliquid has shown their hand, and look, 𝘬𝘬𝘬 has shown their hand too. And you got where as a trader, where are you going to choose to trade? You have an entity, the LP, whether it's LLP on 𝘬𝘬𝘬 or HLP on Hyperliquid, that is taking the other side of every single one of your trades as a trader. Where are you going to choose? Are you going to choose the venue that is prioritizing the LP making money or the trader making money? LLP decided to take a loss and benefit their traders. You can't just let all the traders go to a different venue.
No, I know.
And that's what Jordy's trying to say here.
Yeah. I think there's another interesting one here. CZ doing some desperate PR damage control. Everyone now knows Binance is solely responsible for the market crash. Things are going to be bad for Binance and Aster, that they're so bad that they need to retweet a well-known Solana and Cardano scammer. Get your money out of Binance immediately. The tweet says Binance has 60% of longs liquidated, Hyperliquid and others 90% liquidated. Why is that?
I love this. This guy is so funny. He's such a Hyperliquid bull. I think the way you pronounce his name is 𝐴𝐴 Alex. And I just think, I mean, he just has the wildest way of twisting everything in Hyperliquid's favor, which, as a Hyperliquid bull myself, I'm fine with.
It is funny, right?
CZ doing some desperate PR damage control, retweeting Cardano and Solana scammers. But it brings up a curious question. Why were there so many more liquidations that occurred on Hyperliquid than Binance and some of the other perps exchanges? Well, it was because of the prioritization schedule that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Hyperliquid is choosing to maintain solvency. They're choosing not to retroactively recompensate traders.
Yep.
They're choosing to just let the system work as intended. And unfortunately, that means traders get screwed.
Yeah. I mean, Binance is definitely on the chopping block right now. Like, I've seen multiple tweets saying, like, get ready for Binance scam era, because they're realizing that, like, where the puck is going as far as where trading is going to be happening. And, like, pushing, that they're just going to be doing what they can to kind of, like, I don't know if it's like exit scamming, but it's like they're going to do what they can to basically squeeze what they have, because everyone knows the whole token launch process for centralized exchanges is pretty roughed up. Everyone knows that Binance has been making money on that, all these other ones. And so like, I don't know, man, this guy's obviously just like crazy. He'll be like in CZ's comments, like calling him like just absolutely going at him. But I mean, he's kind of got a point.
Well, he's also got a thread that he's pulling on. And I think Hyperliquid as a community is getting riled up because, and I know you've seen this rumor as well, the number one threat to Hyperliquid right now is that CZ gets pardoned by Trump.
Why is that?
We should have had that on Rumor Mill. But if CZ gets pardoned by Trump, he means he can run scam season inside of America. And if it's crime season inside of America, then I think Hyperliquid has lost a lot of
I think
legs.
they've already taken away a lot of the regulatory rules, if you will, that are allowing Hyperliquid to have its own success. Like Hyperliquid had that success, no KYC, etc. Now Coinbase has perps. They've enabled perps trading in the States. So yeah, I see what you mean, but I think it's a little bit. I think the competition is a little bit more nuanced. You know what I mean?
I'm sure 𝗂𝗂 would agree with you on that.
You think? I don't think he would. All right, guys. I think we've got our boy Andrew from Recall coming in. He is the CEO of Recall. They're building some really, really cool AI battles for trust, reputations, rewards, backed by Multicoin, Coinbase, and the others. So yeah, I mean, I can't lie. I just want to ask him about what all the stuff that we've just been talking about all day. I'm sure that's kind of where we'll end up getting to. But yeah, that was those are like the main two things that I wanted to go over.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's bring them up. We still got the 𝗂𝗂 Hyperliquid bull on the screen. But yeah, I'm stoked.
Hyperliquid bull.
There's so many different ways to look at what happened over the weekend that the more that we talk to people, everyone that we have on the show is just extremely knowledgeable and very insightful and thoughtful. So the more that we have, the more perspectives that we have on the show, the more well-rounded I feel like even my own understanding is. And Andrew's up now. He's on the show.
What's up,
Andrew, welcome.
Hi there. Thanks, guys. Wow. The chat earlier, I'm going to get his name wrong now too. And you already got it right. But 𝘂𝘂𝘵𝗧𝘗?
Yeah.
Amazing. So good.
Dude, yeah, it's just a wild weekend, right?
Yeah. I have to ask you, what did crypto learn?
Yeah. I mean, I asked our guy, Omer from Chaos Labs. And I mean, well, the one key thing here was like that there's been like this like almost like a wall in between CeFi and DeFi protocols because like they feel like they may be like competing with each other. Like centralized exchanges feel the pressure from Uniswap, etc. But now it feels like basically what Omer was saying is like we got to bridge that gap because like any discrepancy that happens in DeFi, it causes a problem in CeFi. And like Binance has suffered $283 million of customer paybacks as a result of USDE being depegged on their platform. But on Aave, it was fine. There was no depegging. And so I think that's what crypto has probably learned.
Yeah. That's interesting. What about the consumers? Like I heard, I heard a little bit of the conversation earlier about, just the way people are trading things, like even meme coins on perp dexes and everything. Like, how does this learning moment dissipate in the community?
I think we're going to see an even more bimodal distribution here. Like we're going to see some people that have learned their lesson and say, okay, this is what leverage can do to people. We need to take it easy on the leverage. We've seen that these things can draw down by 50% in a matter of 15 minutes. Like that means it's really important not to use too much leverage. On the other side, we're going to see people try to make it all back in one trade. And they're going to ramp up the leverage and they're going to think, oh, we just washed all this open interest. And now financial nihilism is back. We're going to go 100x long on meme coins. Yeah.
What does your weekend look like, Andrew?
Busy weekend. I mean, mostly focus on product and building and, didn't have any direct exposure to anything here. So mostly just trying to consume and understand what happened because what a massive kind of moment that's going to be referenced for years again as we try to build and change things. So really just trying to learn like you all and figure out what it means.
Yeah. Well, dude, it's your first time on the show. We appreciate you hopping on. We'd love to just understand a bit about yourself, man. Like what is your kind of story with regards to building Recall? What are some of your specialties? What's your background? Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I'm probably an oddball in your guest lineup today. I'm much more coming at this from models and intelligence and machine learning and AI, and trying to think about how crypto and the rails that we're all building can be improved by and improve those systems. And so even this, man, I've been thinking about it a lot. But my background is, a biologist, actually, just working on big data systems, trying to figure out how you can take huge data sets and determine if you can get signal from all of that to either forecast or understand something about the current reality. And that way of thinking applies itself really well to crypto. I was thinking about kind of the meta of this weekend quite a bit. And it's I go back to that kind of old trope of, crypto is a really interesting thing because we're trying to reinvent the entire financial system out in the open, and how unique that is. But at the same time, there's all these secondary risks that are layered onto it that are not totally open, that are not totally transparent to people. So we'll get into it a bit, what we build, but I was just very interested in this idea that, I don't doubt that in the future, if the hyperliquids still operate the way that they operate, that there will be independent swarms testing and stress testing those systems through a lot of different scenarios in order to create information about what exactly is going to happen. This moment that we're going into with AI dramatically reducing the cost of software means that a lot of these software systems that used to be too costly for us to build, the tertiary software systems that aren't really your direct problem, are suddenly much easier and faster to build. And so I feel like the whole simulation engine of these open economic rails are themselves going to be open and available to everybody. And then all of our wallets will be having AI trying to consume that and understand what those stress tests and security audits and warnings actually mean to us. So back to the consumers, when you're putting the 10x leverage on Fartcoin, what does that really mean? And what do the different scenarios tell you could happen to that? And I think that's the world, if we're going to really make this, an open financial system where all these things are possible, and nobody's telling you that they can't be done. If all things can be done, just arming the people with a lot more information, and I think we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is a good time to describe a little bit more in detail what Recall is, because you're talking about some of these agent systems and these swarms of intelligence. And you're absolutely right, especially in the era of prediction markets, kind of analyzing what these potential outcomes are, I think is going to become a lot more popular. And if we can run simulations and we can understand, okay, well, what if, Trump announces a tariff thing, on Friday after the markets closed, we probably would have been a lot more prepared. So what is Recall, and generally where you see these creases in this trajectory of where we're headed between AI and crypto and the hyper financialization of everything? Where have you been able to find this frontier that you've decided to innovate on with Recall?
Yeah, I guess the quickest sort of segue into what exactly we do is to just point out this kind of moment that we're in with the AI models. Anybody who is kind of using and touching these models every day knows that they're incredibly capable. And what they're capable of right now is far outpacing the distribution of that ability. So there are niche pockets of the world that are able to harness these models to do incredibly sophisticated work. And that's actually really hard. And the reason it's really hard, and that's why it's kind of a fragmented world of a lot of people doing it. And the reason it's hard is because these models are very good in the middle. They're very good at doing work, but the difficult things to get them to do that work well come on both ends. How do you set up and prompt models to do what you want them to do? And a lot of that is being solved by agentic builders. You can think of agents as essentially really sophisticated harnessing to do prompting, to get these agents to do again and again the decision-making, the management, the loops with tools. Okay, so a lot of people are trying to solve that. The other end of the problem is verification. Once any agent or model has done what you needed it to do, how do you know that the outcome is actually good? How do you know that it's quality? How do you know that it's rigorous? And that verification is still incredibly hard and out of reach for a lot of people. And so what we're trying to do is use the best of what crypto does to bring that into protocols. So to allow the agent builders to prove what they're good at and to prove the outputs of these agents are high quality, so that businesses and protocols and individuals can begin to trust them and adopt them faster and get back to the pace at which the models are advancing themselves.
Yeah, I'm curious from just like the pure markets perspective here. If you were looking at the kind of what happened in DeFi this past weekend in 5 years from now, right? In a more agentic on-chain kind of landscape, like what comes to top of mind as to like what may have been different, or like in times of crazy market volatilities and things when humans are too slow to react or aren't on your computer, et cetera. Like, are we thinking about these as like risk management agents, as like profit, agent trying to make money? Like what do you think the change of the landscape is going to be in these high volatility scenarios when agents are on chain?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many components of what happened this weekend that are going to take different kinds of agents and different capabilities that they're bringing to the networks. And so that's a lot of what our protocol is trying to enable, is to allow those sort of niche use cases to all be stacked up, and then to actually allow those agents to coordinate together to give you very sophisticated results. And so you think about like the short positions that were starting to stack up for the 24 hours before the tweet that really led to all of this cascade of events. That building up should have been something that everybody's wallet was aware of. And if you were in a position of high risk, you probably would be getting very red alerts that something abnormal is happening. That is, if it comes true, is going to be a direct catastrophic event for your positions. But there should have been a lot of other warnings for you to get into those positions in the first place. But I think that kind of world is coming. And I think like in 5 years, I mean, it is so hard to predict where we get. I don't expect there to be many trades on crypto that aren't AI augmented. For the same reason that software engineering today, there aren't many lines of code anymore that aren't AI augmented, if not AI written themselves. And I think that's a really exciting world. I don't think we're there yet. One of the ways that we are verifying intelligence is like you can think of agents as they're sort of in their early development cycle. We know that like the meme of agents has been around for a year or two, and a lot of people building into that. But like really these really strong models that can do long horizon planning and have big context windows and have access to lots of different tools and know how to reason through using them. That's all very, very recent. And so the builders are just really harnessing that. And so they're still they still have a hard time with, long-term planning and being able to actually like execute a plan over many days. But what we have are actually arenas that are testing builders that can do that. We thought it was one of the most exciting areas to build first, even though we know the agents aren't going to be fully capable of that now. Our arena is actually a place to start measuring how quickly they're advancing towards that ability and when you're going to have agents that are doing that. In the future, we'll fragment that and have much more nuanced skills that the agents are actually fully capable of now. But I was going to say, we have an arena where agents are actually perp trading. And we actually just launched this a couple of weeks ago. We have another one launching very shortly. There's a really interesting thing that the winning agent in that first arena, it won by actually taking out pretty large leverage positions. I don't think it shorted any tokens, and it had like 10x leverage on most of its positions. So just thinking about if that arena had been running on Friday, I think we would have seen that most of the strategies that the agents were actually deploying for perp trading were not prepared for this either. And that's actually really valuable verification as we're trying to figure out how capable AI is and how quickly we're going to deploy it into these systems. But at the same time that I'm saying it's not ready now, I think it's advancing incredibly fast. And we're one of the early ecosystems that's letting the builders measure and test these things in order to advance them week over week and get better until we can see the real marks of success.
Andrew, there's kind of these two, I don't know, angels, demons, however you want to call them, these competing forces. On one hand, we have AI, which is going to lead to this explosion in productivity as we start to implement these things and they do become ready. And the theory is that that's going to be very deflationary because it's going to take, a lot of systems and it's going to make them a lot more efficient. On the other hand, we have this debasement trade that we've been talking about time and time again, and that's leading to this meteoric rise in gold, the precious metals. It's also leading these economies to run their budgets hot and print money, and that leads to increases in asset prices. So when you're thinking about kind of these two competing forces, where do you see this playing out? How do you see this evolving in the markets and generally as a builder? How do you think these things shake out?
Oh, that is a loaded question for sure. I forget how you say his name. I think we've all heard it thrown around in the AI conversations, the 𝘗𝘂𝘵𝗕 paradox,
yeah,
the idea.
The induced demand.
Exactly. The basis that if you build a bigger road, you're just going to get more drivers is the easiest way to summarize it. And so a lot of people apply that to things like software engineering. We're actually just going to write a lot more software now. But I think this is going to play out over phases. We're sort of, especially in like the crypto domain, we're in the first inning in a lot of this. These models we're just figuring out what they're capable of and where they're best applied. I do take I don't know if you'd call it like a dystopian, tint to my view of where that could go, because you think about automated financial rails and models that can read and consume news and information just as capable as I can. I don't know if there's, if you zoom far enough out, I don't know if there's a role for humans in crypto. Maybe a select few that are really trying to exploit the edges in what models are capable of for a while. Yeah, I just don't know. It's kind of like, maybe the best analogy is what happened with high frequency trading. There used to be a role for humans that were trying to do it on their own. And then really that got quickly consumed by hedge funds that had armies of people building models and automated systems much faster than any individual could actually remain profitable in that system. And I think we might see similar things happening in crypto. I don't know what that means for the actual markets and what kind of memes run through crypto and make it profitable. At the same time, there are things that are distinctly human. So like the social aspects and things like that. Probably there's always humans playing games with that, but actually moving liquidity and things like that, it seems like it's an AI dominated future.
Yeah, that was a loaded question for sure.
I don't even know if I answered it. I did my best.
That was a loaded answer.
No, you did. I mean, there's a shifting landscape that's evolving here, and it's AI that's getting increasingly better, and it's humans that are just continuously getting their weaknesses exposed.
Yeah, 100%. And the human weaknesses are places for AI, actually. So humans that do want to continue to participate can start actually hiring and building and leveraging AI shields that help them avoid the weaknesses and use their taste or judgment to still remain profitable or have fun in this system without taking on that massive exposure or getting totally liquidated over a 4-hour period.
More specifically, how can they use recall to accomplish that?
Well, recall's in our early stages. And so we're really focused on trying to measure and assess and pull the agent builders to these ecosystems. I think there's just, for all the reasons I just said, there's a massive opportunity for AI to have a very important role in the future of crypto, but we don't want people to rush towards that in the wrong ways. So we're trying to create protocols that one can start performing the verification of the agent performance, can actually recruit more agent builders to get verified, to show what they're capable of. And we do that through a couple of different tools. But then we also invite the community in, because we think this whole point of awareness and being on that forefront is actually a really exciting thing. So we have sort of games that users can play on top of that by trying to predict and forecast what agents are capable of before they compete. So we have our community trying to actually recruit and understand what agents and agent teams are doing, and then figure out which ones are going to be the best at these different competitions, whether it's spot trading or paper trading or perp trading, or in the future, other bifurcations of that are coming.
And you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. Are you seeing profitable agents?
We are seeing profitable
Sick.
agents. So, like I said, with caution. So in the spot trading competitions, what we do, just so you understand, actually a click deeper, what we do is we have these series of skill-based competitions, and we call them skill markets. And so a market actually plays out over multiple competitions, and agents compete not just in one competition, but they have to come back and compete again and again in order to show their continued performance. And so the spot trading competition is a weekly P&L competition. So they're going for pure P&L. They can do whatever level of risk they want in their pure P&L skill, and the agents then compete. And when they rank in any weekly competition, they actually build up a score. So if you've played chess, it's a variation of ELO. So in ELO, there's a score that you can basically, if you join the international FIDE for chess, you can play in any FIDE competition, and your score will change based on who you played and what your result was. So we do that per skill pool. So agents compete again and again and try to build that score up to show that they have consistent performance that is better than all of the agents. And so we've had a number of agents there that have actually been consistently profitable week over week. The perps trading we've only run once. We just kicked off our second one, and we'll have a third one next week. And so it's early days to say if they're consistent. And like I said, I think if the ones that had run in the last arena had been running through Friday, we might have seen a different story. So they were profitable, but did not actually live through that dip. So too early to tell.
Yeah, it would be super it'd be super insightful to understand, because agents don't really act with emotion.
Yeah.
But from a pure technical momentum swing perspective, with such fast speed of Sui went from 2.8 to 0.3 or something crazy, or 1.3, something crazy. Would it have hit some meaningful threshold such that it made sense to sell, but then looking back, it would have sold in the wick? From a human perspective, I was I don't even know what I was doing. I was out with some friends, and it happened. And I came back, and prices were down, but they weren't they had came back up.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have a chance to sell, and I wouldn't have I probably wouldn't have done it. But because the agent's 24/7 on, would there have been some parameter that would have hit, that would have caused them to sell, and then underperform just the dumb human who was having a drink?
Yeah. Well, I think whether they're profitable or not at this stage is going to be maybe too early to be enough information to want to use them still, right? So what we're asking these agents to do is kind of the full loop portfolio strategy, which is a really complicated thing. And they're trying to do it over a 1 week horizon. So they're trying to think about entering positions, exiting positions, trying to, stop loss positions, whatever they need to do to maximize profit. Oh, I should have said that the perps competition is actually a risk adjusted one. So it's max profit, low risk, lowest risk to get the max profit. But so they're doing anything they can do that. I think it's probably safe to say that we're a little bit early for models to do that super effectively all the time. But you can break that skill up. And we thought it's a very interesting kind of go to market for us to have that be some of the earliest builders. They're very exciting. They're very exciting to watch. But we can start to break that up. So some models are probably going to be very good at monitoring social and news and understanding what critical sentiment signals are coming in. And that's one skill, and it doesn't take that full loop. But it takes some full loop because you want to understand like what is it relevant to. And then there's other skills of just saying like SWE is down. I don't know what it would totally went down. SWE is down this amount. Is it a buy or sell? And it's a pure Boolean prediction it needs to make. And those are very different things. And then how long should I hold it is a different thing. So I think what we'll start seeing is that these skills start to split into many different skills, and you'll see agents specialize in and trying to coordinate. And what's so exciting for us is it is so early in the agent kind of internet. Coordination among agents across organizations is not happening yet. As much as people are building for it, it's not happening yet. But we see like Google launched their protocol AP2, which includes work like 𝘮𝑀402, which is a standard for agents to transact stable coins for API access and things like that. They're basically setting up the protocol for the internet to support agent payments and agent coordination. And that's just going to continue again and again. So then if you think about what an agent needs to actually manage a portfolio full loop, which is maybe the hardest skill, it's actually the coordination of a subset of many agents that are making decisions at different times. If you're into the brain, it's kind of like panpsychism of agents. You have different consciousnesses that are dominating depending on what the different thing happening in the world is, and then your portfolio will be managed by that. But that's a few steps down the road.
Yeah, right. So yeah, but that's like, you're doing business and one part of your brain is on, you're with your family, then there's another part of the brain oriented, then you're driving a car. Like people think of trading as just one thing, but it's like there's risk management, there's like stop losses, there's a whole
Exactly. Like Friday night, the fear index would have been full red, and a different agent would have become the dominant voice saying, this is what we do. This is what we start to execute. I need this. I need this. I need this. There'll be some orchestration. That agent may not actually be making money for the same organization as the agent that is just handling a trading sideways sort of week. And then there's some orchestration happening on top of it. And that, that's the world we'll get to. But right now, you kind of test the whole thing. You take little stabs at some of the smaller pieces. As we bring intelligence into this open financial system that we're all trying to reinvent, we need to kind of find the best agents that can reinvent or augment each piece of it, almost one at a time. But back to our protocol, what we're actually doing is creating these skill markets where we're slowly inviting other organizations to start to define what is the skill that they need most on their protocol and in their network, and actually seeding that and getting agents to come compete for that. And so we'll see even faster proliferation than the current state, which is us right now curating which skill comes out at which time.
Especially coming from your biology background and that economic background, to hear you talk about some of the ways that you're implementing the brain structure and the way that it's moving into AI and the intelligence system, it's just it runs so deep.
It really just is a brain. It's just a separate brain.
Yeah. When I became a biologist, the thing that made me convert to being a biologist as an undergrad, and I read this book, and I was so fascinated by the book. I wrote the author a letter, and he responded to me, and I was like, "Oh, that's it. That's all I need." That.
What was the book? And
Exactly. The book was about the moment in the evolution of life where all we had on the world were single cellular organisms, and then at some point they made the choice, that's a bit anthropomorphizing them, but they made the choice to become multicellular. Why? How did that happen? How did cells aggregate and make the choice that one cell could die to save the entire colony or the entire structure, and that they would share resources across them? How did that moment happen? And that, I mean, you just made me think of it. I hadn't thought of it, but that's a bit of what I'm talking about, that right now we're really in the single celled agent, but there's just single cells out here in the world. But we will pretty quickly get to this world where agents are coordinating and working together, and those structures will get more and more sophisticated.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we think of agents now, you think of like you're just going to have like this one personal assistant agent that's going to manage your entire book for you. But what you're kind of realizing here, and what you're building Recall for, is like it's almost like there's going to be like basically you're trying to like understand that if we can have this shared growth experience of like specialization with specific types of agents, then theoretically we can combine these in some capacity.
Yeah.
And get a much better result via orchestration. Now, whether or not people are actually going to want to give away their sentiment, fear, greed agent to like somebody else is a question that we'll have to kind of get to, or like how open source are we going to want to make these things? If there's profit on the line, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, but I think that like conglomeration of intelligence is like. It's just fascinating because it kind of like you think of like agents as like, oh, I'm gonna interact with an agent, but it's like maybe there's gonna be like your master one that is like it has access to all of the sub ones, but like they make the final call based on like all of the master or like all the sub ones.
I mean, this is what happens if you use ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT is actually a set of agents underneath the hood, and they try to route your request to the right agent at the right time. You just don't see it as much. And so you just think about bringing that kind of intelligence into the open financial rails, and it's going to look a lot more like open protocols with, like you're saying, like, are you going to trust this thing? Well, trust comes down to past performance. It comes down to who else is using it. It comes down to insurance, or what kind of risk are they putting on the line, and how much control do you need to give them of things? And all of those kind of building blocks are to be built now. That's so exciting to me, and we're really excited to help out doing that.
Yeah, Andrew Hill, thanks for your time, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think we could talk about agents and agentic systems for hours. So you can
Let's
come
do it
on
again.
whenever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a couple months down the line or something. We'll be glad to have you back.
Andrew,
Cool.
before you go, shout out that name of the book.
Oh my gosh, I think it is just called On Multicellularity or something like that. I mean, this is ages ago, but I think it's something like that.
I'm gonna have to notebook LM that one.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
Listen to it. Cool. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. We'll see you
All right,
next
buddy.
time.
Bye.
Cheers, man. Glad that everyone has survived this market downturn, eh?
Not everyone. Did you
Not
see
everyone?
Rumor Mill?
Yeah, apparently the market's hot. What's going on in the market, actually? We got
we're
Michael
pumping.
and Vance from Framework coming up next. Sol 205. Wow.
Yeah.
Bounced right off of that 200-day SMA on the daily time frame, all the way back down to 172 on Friday. Back above 206 now. Bitcoin 115.2. Sol, ETH 42.30. I mean, guys, like this is what you can expect with the late stage volatility in the market. I mean, it's kind of what you get. You get this sort of craziness that that just kind of happens. Hype is back about 41. Yeah, I mean, if we V reversal this thing, it's going to be unreal. I mean, these guys are going to be so bulled up, it's going to be insane. I guarantee Vance and Michael are going to come on here swing and talking about all-time highs for sure. 100%.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you saw the screenshot I sent you of Vance's retweet of DGen Ping.
What was DGen Ping's take? What is the lore with DGen Ping? I keep seeing him on Twitter. I have no idea.
I don't know, but let's try to provoke a retweet from him. Let's get these guys to talk about him.
Wait, so he just...
He said all-time highs in October.
Well, he tweeted the exact day.
He said 10-10 bid, and then he said like 11-7. I don't want to get that wrong, but it was something like that. Yeah, he tweeted the exact day to buy and sell. Let's see. That was a while ago, but he did say buy 10-10.
Well, the thing is, people don't realize people don't yet know if he is like if he's from Europe or if he's from the other places Like if you're or if you're from the States or the other places. Because if you're from the States, then your date setup is wrong, right? But if you're from Europe, then it's like the month first, then the day. In the States, it's like month, day, so it's like, yeah.
Oh, you're saying like 11/5
7
could be
May,
it could be
or
May
it could
11th,
be
or it could be November 5th.
5th. Yes.
Okay, so we got to ask Vance and Michael.
So nobody knows where they're from.
Well, 10/10 is the same either, whichever
Right.
way you cut it.
Well,
10/10 or 11/5.
Well, 10/10 it could be November. It could be the 10th day of November in November.
No. 10/10 is 10/10.
Or
whether
October.
it's month. Yes. Month.
Yeah. So either way, it's 10/10, obviously. But this is okay. So now you see why 𝘗𝘗𝘠𝗧's gone viral, because a bunch of like numbskulls like me are like, where is he from? And then they're like,
November is the 10th month.
they're trying to debate whether or not it's like he's American or not. Wow,
He's also
markets
been
look-
around for a while.
Dude, even the S&P, I mean, S&P obviously got hit, but it's up 1.5% today.
Well, S&P is, and it was
down,
down
but-
2% on Friday. So S&P has almost made a complete reversal of what happened on Friday.
Yeah,
Obviously, didn't have to go down with the wicks over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, ETH's breaking to new local highs right now. I mean, yeah, it looks good. I mean, I think we're basically about to full send.
Yeah,
I
if we
mean,
reclaim 4,400, 4,500, this is pure wick off spring, straight off of the lows. And we
Yeah,
just
this
use
is
this
about
as
to
extra
be-
momentum.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty, I mean, yeah, because when you get a washout of that caliber, yeah. So, all right, well, we're going to hear what Vance and Michael have to say.
And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we're going to get them in the chat. The team is just setting them up in the back. But that's generally my understanding of these things is once you get a washout, you clear the books. There's low liquidity. Makes it easier to go up or down.
The books are cleared, I'll tell you that much. There is no more clearing left. I mean, if there's more clearing left, we got to brace for impact. But I mean, it's just anybody who was long on any altcoin in the top 100 basically got washed. Like, it could have literally just been a 1.2x long on, like, like I use Sui as an example, and you would have got wiped. The only ones that were safe were ETH and Sol and Binance Coin, and like maybe Hype, but even Hype got kind of hit. So like if you had any leverage, you were getting hit, which is just
absolutely.
yeah.
No, cozy and spot.
But it looks good
There you
now.
go.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. All right, guys, we got Vance and Michael ready to come up. We're gonna bring them up, and I have a feeling that they're gonna be max bullish. They tend to be. We've wiped out the entire market. We're bouncing quite well now. ETH 4240,
Books are
Bitcoin
thin.
1153, Sol above 205. So yeah, Rob, it's looking like the market.
Hyperliquid has reclaimed the 40s. Let's get
Yep.
these guys up so we can. Yeah, here we go. All right,
Gents, how we doing?
guys, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
We've survived.
Congratulations on surviving.
Surviving the bear market of 10-10.
Yeah, 10-10. 𝘗𝘗𝘠𝗧,
We were just talking about DJ
favorite
Ping.
character currently.
I love 𝘗𝘗𝘠𝘠𝗧. I don't know who it is, but he's got good calls.
Well, Vance, we saw your retweet of all-time highs in October. That's
Yeah, I mean, the things
quite
I'm
cool.
looking at right now are, sorry, I'm just looking at my phone. But what's interesting is that all the funding rates are still negative. So, I mean, especially on all the alts, because they got hit so hard, it feels like someone just kind of sold on perps their entire alt inventory. And even with alts rallying, the funding rates are still pretty negative. And most of the time with alts, like, it's not really negative or positive. Just not much of anything is happening. But it feels like finally someone is offsides on alts, which is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was just saying, if you had any sort of leverage, even like to the tune of 1.1x or 1.2x on those top 50, top 100s, you basically got washed. And I think like now kind of like the thesis is basically that's been, that's happened, and, we can continue up from here. I'd like to talk about the future and kind of like what you guys are seeing, but we got to kind of do a post-mortem here. So, you guys are, obviously on the East Coast. This happened like Friday evening, or sorry, West Coast.
West Coast, bro.
This happened Friday evening. so for you guys, it was like midday-ish, afternoon-ish. Where were you guys when this happened? What was your response? What the hell? Like, what was this like from Vance and Michael's eyes?
Where were you when it happened? This isn't like the JFK assassination. I think, I mean, we were actually trying to record a podcast.
Okay.
We had to put a pin in that because just in case the market literally went to zero, we needed to be up and ready to do things. But I think the main thing is that we mostly hold spot and we don't trade on perps, especially not on these overseas centralized exchanges. And I think, you know, there's been a lot of postmortems done about what exactly happened. So I don't think we need to like get into, I mean, obviously it was like USDE depegged, which then liquidated everyone. And then, you know, there was questions about whether it was malicious or innocuous, but there are people who got to buy USDE at 65 cents at large size. And then same with, I think, 𝘗𝘗𝘗𝘴. And we have heard of, you know, at least one trading firm who kind of got taken out, which would make sense given that all the alts sold off the hardest. If you ever see something depeg and then ETH and Bitcoin sell off and then everything else sells off, that means that someone had to liquidate basically all of their inventory of alts to keep themselves stable. But I think the first thing is I feel really terrible for everyone who was impacted by this. Like the list of hyperliquid wallets that went from 70 million to zero, you know, or the hundreds that went from, you know, 6 figures to zero. That's just like absolutely terrible. And there was someone who benefited from this on the other side. You know, we don't know exactly who it is, but I've seen some guesses on Twitter. But it is like kind of a shame that like crypto Twitter is only capable of like really kind of explaining it in the most complex terms possible, like really taking it into orbit, or, you know, kind of giving the response of like, well, fuck everyone who got ADL'd and like our trading firm had the best day ever. I think this is a tragedy that so much OI got wiped out and so many people in the process. And I think it means that the mission of Hyperliquid has never been more important. Honestly, the industry cannot continue on if Binance is the main venue that we all trade on. It's just nobody wants to allocate capital to a place that is considered dangerous and lawless. And so until we get past that, it's going to be an albatross in the industry, and feel bad for everyone who got impacted.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. I think, you know, just to roll it back onto what we were doing and talking about and thinking about on Friday, but then also over the weekend, when you see a major wick like we saw on Friday, everybody, like, gas basically goes to 500 on ETH. Nobody can move assets around. You're kind of waiting for these pending transactions to settle. And I think generally it takes a couple of hours for some of these systems to kind of like catch up. But once they catch up, that's when you really do kind of have the, like, everything starts processing, you know, orderly or disorderly. Typically it's pretty orderly these days. The last disorderly process that we saw was March 12th, 2020. And, you know, that was the COVID crash, where things really did fail and go to halt. But what we kind of see typically is you see everything kind of orderly process in the way that it was started. It gets, you know, churned through the funnel as it goes in, and then everything kind of settles. And what typically also happens is you end up with, on Saturday or the day after, another retest where you get a bunch of people who say, okay, let's go see if there's real kind of staying power to this, you know, dead cat bounce or potentially resurgence, V-shaped recovery. And that's where it gets tested again. And these are actually great buying opportunities. And so our primary focus, you know, when we're thinking about what to do and how to react, you know, like Van said, we're in spot, we have stables, we're moving stuff around on chain to be able to get into some of these buying opportunities. But that's the first conversation that we have. It's like, what do we buy? What's going to be the huge opportunity here? And we're going to get probably one, but maybe two shots at doing it, whether it's right now or we get to wait 24 hours for that second wick down. But unless there was something substantial that drove this, which it seems like there isn't, you know, Trump already came back and kind of rebuffed the commentary that he had that drove this in the first place. Unless there was something substantial, this was going to come back, and we knew that there was going to be a bit of a V, as we're seeing right now. So I wholeheartedly agree with everything Van said, where it's terrible that this industry is still prone to this type of stuff. Binance, I think, you know, I don't know if it's going to be another major wick or another major catastrophe, or if it's just going to be like 1,000 paper cuts that finally gets everybody to recognize that this is not what we need. And decentralized players like Hyperliquid are the ultimate solution. but it definitely does push us in that direction as an industry. So it's positive in that respect.
I think it's important to just call out a couple of the pieces of evidence that support what you guys are saying. Flood, Thinking USD, put it like this. Why is nobody talking about the fact that clearly Binance had special non-ADL deals with certain counterparties, clearly violating the fact that they're supposed to be a neutral entity? What other preferential treatment do they give to insiders, info on users, special APIs? When you guys are looking at the deals that Ethena has negotiated with centralized exchanges like Binance, they've probably done it elsewhere, and there's probably other projects that have done this. What goes through your, like, the psychology and your train of thought? How do you react to, did you already know that things like this are taking place? And as an industry, how are we supposed to reconcile with these special deals that we don't know are taking place?
Deals in this industry, if you really think about it. And if you are 5, 6, 7% of open interest on any of these exchanges, you do have a special deal, honestly, whether you know it or not. And what that means for everyone else is that they don't have it. So every single dollar of open interest that's on these perps exchanges that does not have ADL protection, you know, they are disproportionately in the eye of the storm when these things happen because the other parties are not. And, you know, it's kind of, you know, I think Ethena did a lot of things right. You know, they had deep DeFi pool liquidity to support themselves. I personally think the use case of USD as margin is cooked. You know, we should not be doing that, especially when things dislocate on a perps basis and your stablecoin is based on a perpetual swap yield exchange. Like, you are obviously going to be impacted by that. Whether Binance did something malicious or not, I think is a different question. But like, generally, like, the risk needs to be tamped down. But when you put any of your coins on these exchanges, you know, you are in their clutches. And, you know, you think about when things like FTX ended, like, as soon as FTT was on that exchange and they put a lot of open interest on Binance, we knew that FTX was done. CZ was not going to let them go. Like, it was just going to end. And I think we got away with one in terms of, you know, Ethena being in that position today. But that was a warning shot. The next one will land. And so I think it's even to people like Aave, like, look at how much USDE is in those pools. And like, I'm kind of touching the fourth rail of like DeFi lending right now, but like, the risk needs to be chilled out a little bit. And there needs to be less concentration within specific coins, I guess USDE today, so that we can be more resilient tomorrow. But you need to be very cautious when you put your coins on exchanges that are centralized, because maybe you have an ADL, maybe you don't, maybe they honor that deal, maybe they don't. But like, you know, you have 7, 8, 9 billion on that exchange. You don't think it's above them or below them to kind of take 10 or 20% of that? I don't know. You just got to be careful.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys touched on this. I don't know how my Ethernet dropped when I'm literally wired, but the question that 𝘗𝘳𝘠𝑚 posed was around who do you kind of favor when it comes to perps dexes? Like, do you favor your traders or do you favor your vault depositors? And Hyperliquid has continuously shown its hand to basically favor HLP over anything, with 𝘬𝘬𝘰 Oracle exploit following into this, where HLP had a massive day. I think that they made $40 million. So huge bump up in the expected APR. Then like other ones like Lighter, they ended up taking a big loss on LLP. They had downtime, and others had, you know, different variations. So Vance, I know you're talking a lot about kind of like the actual centralized versus decentralized exchanges, but when it comes directly to perps, like, is there a right way that you think Hyperliquid should, like, did Hyperliquid handle the situation in the way that you think was the best for the platform? Or, you know, is there a right way to handle these types of situations from the perps perspective? Yeah, Michael, you can start then.
Starts. I think the bare minimum in terms of, you favor traders, you favor the vaults. The bare minimum is you need to report the liquidation activity accurately.
Right.
And Binance only reports one liquidation per second. So we actually don't know how many liquidations happen on that exchange, and we don't know how people were treated or how collateral was crossed. Kind of just putting up this veil of opacity and saying, we did it our way and it's all good, doesn't inspire confidence. And even if Hyperliquid could have favored their vaults over traders because they had to. At least everyone knows how the system is designed, and it's transparent. You can tell how many liquidations actually happened. And there is also a systemic underreporting of liquidations because they're so bad, because they don't actually want people to know how many folks got liquidated and under what circumstances. So we need like actual answers to this stuff. And that's like the first principle. After that, you can sort out who's at fault or what happened. But if we don't have the actual data, it's just like fait accompli.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It's exactly what I was going to say, is that transparency ultimately is the deciding factor of who should be winning here. And it doesn't matter whether or not, you favor one side or the other. You just got to disclose all the information. And I think ultimately that will be where the gravitational force pulls in terms of activity and traders and attention and then dollars. And I think that it's just very clearly in the eyes of Hyperliquid at this point, especially in comparison with Binance after the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I was telling Rob earlier that our darling XPL started the weekly candle at 1.6 and is now at 0.35. Where does Plasma go from here? I mean, generally, like, where does this alt market go from here? I think all of crypto Twitter was pretty underwater on XPL and was kind of just like trying to get back up. And it looked like it was going to do it. It went back up to like 1.1 or something. And then, yeah, so clearly, it's taken a hit. Where do you guys see kind of Plasma going from here?
And this gets back to the conversation that you guys had in the war room over the weekend once you saw this dump occurring. It's like, okay, what are we buying? Like, what conclusions came as a result of that conversation?
We put out orders. That's what came out of that. If you're looking for what limit prices and what assets, obviously not going to tell you.
Chill, man. That's not what we're asking.
Look, like our first instinct is to buy. And I think questions about where this or that asset goes are kind of like over-determined when you have a liquidation literally the largest day of liquidations ever in crypto history. And there's a couple of good charts. One is Benjamin Cowan. If you're looking for some light TA, Michael and I have hated Benjamin Cowan for a couple of years now because he's been so right on ETH going down, but he's actually bullish ETH. And he's also got this altcoin chart where it's like literally, 6 years of up and then down, and then it's tapping resistance. And so if you're looking for a chart perspective, that's probably the one I would give you. But I think also going forward, the alt market is going to be bifurcated into people who are building real things and have real traction. And in the case of Plasma, I think it's the 4th or 5th largest chain by stablecoin, and it's really the only one that is able to disintermediate a lot of the legacy lending activity that exists on Ethereum today versus the rest of the market. And I think Michael and I have held over the years most coins that have, are worth holding. But I think now we're down to probably 5 to 7 that we feel good about. And the rest of the market is, basically bleeding to zero. So there's maybe not the most uplifting, kind of commentary that I could give you, but I think it is the most realistic.
It makes sense.
Said, there's now venture opportunities that are available. And even over the weekend, someone bought Athena for 12 cents. It's a 4x to where it is right now. So like you get back to that point that we talked about the hardest day to invest for is today, actually. It's not like when the unlocks happen or when the liquidation's clear. You need to be ready to go. And you need to know why, more importantly, and be very choice on your asset selection.
What I'm hearing, Vance, is that the revenue meta is not dead. There is
the revenue meta is stronger. That is just a business. Right. Yes.
Well, I don't know. I'm hearing this like the next, like in the Telegram chats with like, the on-chain guys and stuff, the next meta is the return back to the nihilism because we swung too far to like this revenue thing.
What? I can't even.
That is what's being said.
It feels like people are taking investment advice from people who consider investing in crypto the same thing as like daily fantasy sports.
Yeah. Those are the people that are going way out on the risk curve, and they're saying, I have to make it all back in one trade. And the only way to do that is to go further out on the risk curve.
Also, the reason you lost it all in one trade was because you were all the way out on the risk curve.
And just to be clear, there is a huge difference between investors and traders. And it's all about time horizon. And if you want to really make money, the only way to do that sustainably is by investing. You can try and trade, but there's probably like 2 people in the world who've historically been traders that have been able to make it work. Paul Tudor Jones is one of them. If your name's not Paul Tudor Jones, I don't think you're going to do it.
And neither of us are like that either.
Right.
Or the best thing that we can do is wait people out. Buy a lot,
Mhm.
wait a long time.
Yeah,
So
patience
if you're
is a
asking
virtue.
for what the market looks like in a week, I have no idea. In a year, I probably have a good idea. In 10 years, I think I know where it's going. And it is just towards fundamental value. But the more things like this happen where the industry seems dangerous and lawless, the less amount of flows that we will get. So it behooves everyone to get behind Hyperliquid because frankly, like I think the industry needs Hyperliquid as much as Hyperliquid needs the industry at this point.
Wow.
I would also honestly just go back to it. I would put plasma in that category too. I mean, we are seeing both the stablecoin volume on plasma just hit over $1 trillion annualized, and it's been around for a week. It's also the 4th largest blockchain in terms of stablecoin TVL. Now, one of the things that we describe is there's a separation between payment stablecoins and yield coins. Yield coins are what we consider to be ultimately interesting when it comes to stablecoins. Payment stablecoins are maybe what Tempo is trying to do and less interesting. I would say it's really, really hard to build a business where your blockchain is based around fees from payments. Just look at Visa. You have to have that level of scale to be able to actually have a real business model. Once you have it, you have a moat. But if Tempo is really going after Visa, that's going to be hard to disintermediate. I would much rather build financial services around things that are yielding 7, 8, 9% and be able to, cut a nice healthy fee on that.
And the names that got hit the hardest this weekend were the ones with the most perp open interest.
Mhm.
Everyone literally got liquidated. And so now like the only bids that were backing it was spot. What this looks like going forward is spot bids need to rebuild prices, and then you can layer on perps on top of that in terms of more leverage. But you should be looking for high quality assets and a spot driven rally. And for everyone else who got a lot of their open interest wiped, the slate is basically wiped clean for them. And that is a good thing. You do not need this level of altcoin OI buildup. You need more fundamental spot bidding relative to the price.
And where does that come from? If we're zooming out a little bit and we're thinking about kind of like these concentric circles of industry buyers that have yet to come into the industry, what do you think the perception was and the reaction is from the non-crypto native firms, institutions, and buyers? How do you think they're reacting to this washout? And are they looking at this like now there's an opportunity to come in and pick up the scraps? Or are they like, this thing's fundamentally broken, it's lawless, it's still the Wild West, we're still going to wait it out on the sidelines?
So there's 2 reactions. The first is the people who do have the lawless reaction. Honestly, those are the flighty, transitory, kind of uninteresting participants that weren't ever really going to be staying a long time anyways. Anyone who's actually been following this industry is probably looking at just what I described, where Friday was the sell-off, Saturday was the test, Sunday was the recovery. I think you could also extend that to weeks where you say, okay, this week was kind of like a crazy wick. Let's see what happens next week. There might be a retest. And then the week after that might be the recovery, the full recovery, maybe back to 4,500 ETH, basically where we were before anything. And I think that you're going to start to see institutions slowly start to get in once they can start to assemble a pretty strong case around recovery being the narrative. And it's not going to happen. Like, think about it. They have investment committees. They've got to move cash in, which takes maybe a day or two for a wire. Like they're not people, like Framework who can jump in, 10 minutes and move cash around because we've got stables on chain. It's a very different process. And so they're going to take days to maybe a week or two, but those are the ones that we're going to want to see come into the industry because they're going to be buying spot and they're going to be holding for a very long time. So the things that recover out of this, I think, are going to be the things that actually really outperform going forward. So I'd be keeping my eye on what spot recoveries have you see in the next week.
The other thing I would add to that is the last time something of this magnitude happened, I was in Japan for the tariff tantrum. And so what's really tough is when Michael and I are not physically like co-located.
But we got to follow the sun model when he's in Japan, where it's like he's waking up as I'm going to sleep. It's great.
You don't want that, but whatever. I think ETH got to like 1,400. Obviously, it's a lot higher today. But I was in this art gallery, and there was this painting of these like 2 dudes. I haven't even shown you this yet, Michael. It's like these 2 dudes on this rock in the middle of the ocean, and like the storm is like just like beating down, and like the boat is like in the distance, like it's just completely fucked. And my fiance was like, you should buy that. Like, it's a good representation of what today. You know what? I bought it. I shipped it back, just like arrived at my house actually 3 days ago. And I think the thing that painting means to me is like, it's interesting how fast things can change. It's like you have this huge flush. The industry's fucking over. It's terrible. You're the two dudes on the island, just like storm's coming. And then now we're at like 42, 4,300 and looking for new all-time highs. So like, I think there is a perspective of it's going to take a while to build back. But I think the more realistic crypto perspective is it's going to be even more violent to the upside as a result.
Yeah.
Have these big flushes. You have the negative funding rates. You have people trying to catch it. You have people trying to buy it because they've been waiting. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this turns around just as fast as it kind of happened. But it's going to have to be led by assets that are considered to be safe. Like TradFi is going to want to buy Bitcoin and ETH. The rest of the board, they're going to need some price action to convince them that the markets are actually real and liquid, which I think is the long-term impact of a sell-off like this. Is people are like, what the fuck?
Well, it's just crazy that like the infra quality tokens literally had zero bid. Like that's terrifying for anybody who is like looking at the space.
And the fact that ETH and Bitcoin didn't go down to those levels,
Or Sol,
is a very, very good thing. You
Well,
don't
I think BNB is pushing new all-time highs already today. Your favorite coin, Vince?
Man, favorite coin, yeah. Sign me
You
up.
know, this stuff happens in TradFi too. Like, also just to like level set here, in 2009 and 2011. I mean, I don't know if anybody here remembers Knight Capital. They were losing like $260 million every minute, and they like went bankrupt in 17 minutes or something like that. Like there are massive sell-offs that happen in traditional financial markets. And granted, this is like a decade ago, but also in the same span of time for this industry, that would be like in 2 decades from now, we may still have like massive sell-offs and liquidation candles. But we're just like early, like the infrastructure is still getting kind of built out. And I think we're still trying to decide as an industry, are we going to lean more decentralized and have more transparency and disclosures therefore, or are we going to like trust in these overseas operators to like tell us the real numbers and like turn the lights back on when it's safe, when they determine it's safe. And I think that we're kind of getting smarter. We're getting smarter about this. And unfortunately, you kind of have to have accidents to be able to get smarter. But like, that's what this process is. And you still have them in TradFi. It's just, they're smaller scale and they don't happen as often.
Yeah. I was watching 60 Minutes last night. It was obviously pre-recorded. Larry Fink was on there for maybe 15 minutes. Obviously, all the events of Friday happened after this recording, and then they play it live on Sunday. And he basically, him and let's call them the institutional elites, have adopted this debasement trade that they are now ascribing to gold. And like he literally just basically said, just like gold, crypto is an alternative, and that you should have allocation. Like on 60 Minutes made the exact analogy there. And I think that we had Arthur Hayes on in Singapore, same thing. It seems like if we're zooming out to this macro level, like this debasement thing is like really catching on with people. And obviously gold's at 4,100 for an ounce today, which is unreal. What's your kind of take on this way of describing crypto to like the boomers? Like, is it going to work?
I mean, look, the best way of describing gold to someone who doesn't understand, the best way of describing Bitcoin to someone who doesn't get it is it's digital gold. And then you say, okay, well, how much of the world is on a digital platform now? And you're like, okay, well, you probably need gold for that platform. It's just like the most simple, basic way of putting it. But frankly, like whatever gets the boomers on board, like I'm cool with it. And they're gonna have a first grade understanding of the technology and an elementary understanding of the social aspects and community aspects, but that's fine. You got Morgan Stanley coming out saying to all advisors, and keep in mind, Morgan Stanley is the largest bank platform for asset management because they bought Smith Barney back in the day, and they're the biggest. They said 2 to 4%. 2 to 4% is trillions of dollars. I mean, it is insane the amount of capital that could come into the market just because of that one change on advising. If you go to the full aggressive 4%, it's a lot of money. And I think that type of stuff, this type of narrative, And anyone who gets curious, Stan Druckenmiller had the famous line, invest and then investigate. If you buy some Bitcoin, maybe dig in a little bit. And you're, oh, what's this? Ethereum? That seems kind of cool. Digital oil. Okay, what's this? DeFi? Makes sense. You just pull on that thread and keep going.
Well, it was 1%, right? Like that was the saying the last couple of years.
0.
Well, yeah, it was 0 and then it was 1. But now we're getting like, okay, because even Larry Fink, all he said was like, it shouldn't be a substantial amount of your portfolio, but you should have allocation to it. And I was sitting there with my mom. She was watching. She was like, because I got her into Bitcoin and ETH quite a while ago. And she was like, okay, cool. And I was like, all right, I think we're looking good.
Larry blesses this message.
So it's now evolved from 0 to 1 to up to 4%, which is a significant shift.
I mean, we hold a lot of Bitcoin, We feel good about it. Gold is going up. We think Bitcoin will catch up. There's also a little bit of a bear case relative to ETH at the moment. Michael Saylor bought $28 million of Bitcoin yesterday.
28 million, brother. That size is not size.
His MNAV is 1.18. The realized vol of Bitcoin, I think, has hit like a 5-year all-time low, which is generally like how you monetize a treasury company to buy Bitcoin. Versus Ethereum, basically caught up on ETF inflows. BM&R is buying, I think they bought 100 million of ETH on Saturday, which kind of like slingshotted it back up. Funding rates are still negative, hasn't broken all-time high. The realized vol is, I think, 2x higher than what Bitcoin is.
Ben Cohen's bullish.
Ben Cohen is bullish, which, man, that's kind of who you want.
It's a rarity.
Ben Cohen, just to say, he said his minimum case is 5,300 ETH in short order.
Yeah. He's calling for 6 to 8K as like the top. We don't need to get into like the whole top calling conversation, but that's where that's where his head is at.
Right. And crypto Twitter owns none of it. This is kind of like the thing that sucks about having crypto Twitter on your side is like you get something like happened to ETH in 2021. Everyone was like, it's the safe asset. GCR posted it's going to 10K. We got, all this stuff going on. It was pretty rough few years. You should never consider your reason for going into an asset should not be because it's safe and consensus. That is a reason to sell an asset, not a reason to buy an asset. And so seeing all of this, even just like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's going to 1 million, fait accompli, it's going to happen, makes me more bullish ETH. Not to call for the flippening, but I think you probably see some ETH BTC price action on that ratio starting probably, I guess, today.
Yeah. I mean, Ben Cohen was calling for like a local bottom on that ratio, which in his last video, he's said that it's either happened or it's happening. I called Rob last night. I was pretty hungover, absolutely dead tired. And after this whole washout, I was like, dude, we got to go long ETH. And he's like, bro, you are absolutely just full of it right now. We are not taking leverage after what's just happened. I'm like, bro, we got to go long ETH, bro.
It's the best time.
Here we are.
Andy, that's why you're going to make it.
There it is. Gotta go long ETH. But I think, if we're thinking about like the whole, like that secrets of crypto thing where it's like Bitcoin, ETH, altcoins, and then like it starts over. It's funny that this time has gone way different in terms of like the way that it's happened. But we have had the Bitcoin run, and then of course like the meme coins and such. But that aside, ETH hasn't even had its like all-time high push yet. Like it hasn't had that that moment in the sun, let alone the rest of the market outside of like the bigger winners and the kind of outperformers. So like in a way, it feels like we're almost still like in the earlier part of the cycle than what it seems. But then Ben Cohen saying the final rotation has begun. And again, I don't want to get into the top calling stuff, but it just feels like ETH hasn't had its moment. So I think I agree.
I said this to Vance probably 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point, but I said, what crypto asset, which had a all-time high and then a 3-year bear market, came back to its all-time high, barely broke through its all-time high, and then basically range traded for a period of time? What crypto asset has not substantially broken through that all-time high afterwards? There's not a single one. Not a single major asset has ever done that before. So ETH would be the first time that that's not happened. I don't think that that's possible, especially when you've got structural flows like Bitmine, SBET. I mean, there's just so many catalysts. I think the narrative is pretty clear. It's just a question of when.
And like the chart that you talked about where it's like the Bitcoin and the ETH and the altcoins, like that altcoin thing, that basically what that means to me is like pick a cryptocurrency at random and go all in. and you'll be rewarded. That's just obviously not how this works, right? Like, we now know more about the industry than we knew 1 cycle ago, 2 cycles ago. What's working? Bitcoin, digital gold, ETH, smart contract, world computer. By the way, 90 million people own ETH. It's the second most owned crypto asset. It has native distribution. Sol, I think is there. And then outside of those, what do you have? You have the DeFi assets. You have Aave, you have Sky, you have Athena. Those are the real actual businesses of this industry. Everything else, assume is a zero.
Vance, what's your take on Pump? Are you guys bullish or bearish on Pump? Because it has all of the flows that you would look for in an asset, but it's just a meme coin launchpad. Like, it's just in a
Here's
DEX.
the issue with Pump. We're bullish on Pump. The issue with Pump is that if you own the token, you don't really know what you own. Do you own the cash that they generated before? On what cadence are the buybacks going to happen? Are they guaranteed? For how long? If shit hits the fan, do you get access to their treasury reserves? People are willing to pay a premium for businesses that they even perceive are well run, but they are willing to pay a huge discount for things that they think are even a little bit sketchy.
Or have clarity around what you own. I mean, it doesn't even need to be like well run or fine-tuned operations. It's just like, if you know that the cash flows that are generated in excess of costs are going to flow to the token, that's great. And it's checked through governance. Tokens have governance rights. The less that you have around that, the less clarity and control that you have around that, the less valuable that asset will be.
It does feel different than Hype. Like, Hype has very clear, it's a very programmatic kind of schedule, whereas Pump, you just don't really know.
What if Jeff one day was like, you know what, for today's fees, I'm gonna put half in this treasury company that I control.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Also, what do you think would happen if someone that ran a public company did that? That person would literally be in jail.
Yeah.
So, like, what is the issue? What does the industry grapple with today? A lack of robust disclosures, and frankly, we have enough businesses that are well run to have those things be big companies, but we still struggle with even basic things like, can we all get in the right GAAP accounting standards? You have one platform defining fees as revenue and revenue as fees, and nobody discloses costs. How are you even supposed to sort top to bottom on what to buy? Like, I think Sky is the best in the industry at doing this. This is why we're just such huge bulls on it, is because every single dollar is accounted for, and there's programmatic guarantees about what goes where. Everything else, there's like a huge leap of faith that you need to take. And Plasma is doing quarterly, kind of disclosures and plans and road mapping similar to an earnings call. Same with Sierra. Sky has it by the block. But this is an industry issue that we need to actually grapple with and solve.
So as you guys are thinking through the thesis for these companies, is it essentially like these companies that already have, for lack of a better term, their shit together, these are the ones with the highest chance of survival? And therefore, those are the ones that really meet the criteria as we converge TradFi and DeFi?
Correct. Yep. I mean, look, if you don't have any business and you're disclosing a whole lot of nothing, you're not going to go anywhere. But there are some now opportunities that look almost like Carvana back in the day, like that type of upside reflexivity, where if you were a traditional company, you'd be valued an order of magnitude higher. And I think a lot of these DATs are trying to kind of square the circle by taking their tokens effectively public. But again, you need that real GAAP earnings to actually make that a reality. It can't just be inflation.
And Carvana, in the sense that it went down 99%, there were kind of like questions around what it was doing, if the business was even survivable or a going concern. And for anyone who was really paying attention, it was it ended up being like a 50x from there. It came all the way back to whatever 100x. But I think broadly, the other thing that I would say is, and this is something that we've learned over the years of investing in a framework, you can have a really awesome opportunity at like a $20 million valuation, or you can have a bigger opportunity, maybe at a 200 or a $2 billion valuation. But if you have an operationally excellent team and you've got a much bigger market, it's way more accretive to buy at the higher valuation for the brand name, for the things that's working, because the size of the market is probably far underestimated. And you may say, oh, well, if this thing just gets to that level, then it's a 10x and we can sell it and it's great. The bigger opportunities somehow have a much bigger opportunity for you.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say. The winners are just going to keep on winning. And that's where, in this market, it's going to be dispersion, where the big things that we all have been talking about on this pod today are going to be the ones that keep on winning.
Well, so Crypto Yield Info, one of my favorite OG DeFi guys, it was probably one of the biggest whales on like Yearn and these types of things, been following for so long. And he put out a tweet today, is more or less around, okay, like maybe synthetics, this perp thing that they're doing now is going to reignite this kind of like OG DeFi trade, and like linked Aave. And so he was like, I think that like perp dex trade may be kind of slowing down or over. And so, I just kind of want to give you guys a bit of insight into like where my head was at for last month with this Hyperliquid trade. Was this thing ran to 60, Rob and I had limits from like 52 to 60. I pulled them up. He's in my ear the last 3 weeks, like, you're an absolute moron for pulling our limits up. I mean, it was a small part of the position, and I was actually with Chris Berniski, and he was like, brother, you're flying too close to the sun here. And he sent us like some 𝘗𝘃 fucking philosophy thing. Anyhow, so
Chris,
yeah, so that happened. All the while, Lighter, Variational, Ostium, Pacifica, all of a sudden, crypto Twitter went from like Hyperliquid bulls to like perp dex bulls, airdrop farming. And of course, you live by the sword and you die by the sword. You get all of the Hyperliquid, farmer DeFi people on perp dexes, and then you liquidate a ton of them in this on Friday. Really sad. Again, nothing to like be, bragging about if you didn't, et cetera, shit's, serious. But now I'm calling Rob and I'm like, dude, I'm going to start perps farming. Like, I think it's a great time. OI is down in half. I'm a Hyperliquid bull, but Lighter TG is coming at the end of the year. I think they should be able to trade at least 1/4 of Hyperliquid's market cap. Then you got Pacifica, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think my question to you guys is like, what is, with your Hyperliquid thesis, how do you kind of reason about these other perps platforms getting traction in terms of like OI, in terms of volume? And, do you think it's a decent time to actually jump into like some of the perps farming stuff?
So it's not the exact same comp, but let me like analogize this to maybe like social media back in the day. Because what you had was all these competitive social media platforms starting basically at the same time. And you had billions of dollars of venture capital money chasing after these same, companies. But in reality, the best thing that you could possibly do as an investor is invest in the $15 billion Facebook round, which seemed like the most expensive, crazy thing you could possibly do at that time, because they didn't make any money. And I think that is where we're kind of, and very different in many different ways, but you can kind of think of it in the same way, in that you're talking about a network of users that are generating revenue, they're providing a business. And you could go off and trade, the second tier, the third tier, because it's so much cheaper than, that tier one. But in reality, the best thing you can do is just buy the tier one, because the size of the opportunity that we're talking about here isn't like, does hype go to 100? We're talking about $500 to $1,000. Like, that's the size that we're talking about of the TAM if everything is successful. And over time, you start to add, it's not just the perp stacks. We're obviously going to see a stable coin and stable coin competitions, which are going to generate a ton of revenue. We're going to see what HIP-3 ends up doing, maybe even HIP-4 with prediction markets, who knows? But the idea is, if you have all these things coalesce around the same thing that's already winning, the outcome is just much larger. And if you want to go farm, Lighter or Aster or try to get, some airdrops, that's great. But it's sort of like, okay, well, then what do you do? And we do have a unique opportunity in crypto to go off and farm and have that be accretive to our core positions. It's a great staking mechanism that earns you yield. But I still think you have to question, what are you doing with that, and how are you aligned? What's your long-term investment versus what's your short-term, trade?
Michael, I think your time horizon is a little bit different than Andy's.
Yeah, there's his paycheck to paycheck.
This guy.
Look, if you're gonna farm, make sure you're shorting ETH, okay?
Yeah, for sure, buddy.
Make sure you're shorting ETH.
I mean, isn't it just biblical that we get all of crypto Twitter farming perp dexes that, as Michael's saying, are going to be secondary or tertiary to the winner here, and then the whole thing just gets wiped. It's just.
I mean, but this. I don't want to say that this is always going to happen, but when you have people onboarding into perps platforms that they don't really understand, and you can run up huge on perps. Like, we know people who've made hundreds of millions of dollars just being like 5x long, something for a few years. But that, like, as soon as that happens, it's like as easy it is to lose. And so like the flash crash was always going to be how people got taken out if they got taken out. But I mean, I think people should be searching for more answers than they're currently being given about why this happened. Because it's not just like all good in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose $40 billion, someone obviously made some fraction of that. And like the refunds, I think are like a pittance in terms of what people actually lost.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about this, you know, generally it's a PvP landscape where, especially on these perps platforms, we have longs equal shorts. If all these people got liquidated, say there was 5,000, 10,000 people that got liquidated. How that money ended up in the hands of how many people would you say? Just estimate, like, is it 1? Is it 5? Is it 10? Like, there's an order of magnitude less that we've now consolidated that amount of capital into.
These are very dangerous questions that you're asking. I don't have the answers to them, unfortunately, but
The door is locked.
No more than 10 to 100 people, probably.
Yep.
And how many lost? You know, tens of thousands?
Thousands, orders of magnitude more. And so, you know, it was also interesting hearing you describe your thesis for a valuable company and how the market cap is somewhat irrelevant. It's essentially down to the industry standards that they're reporting. It's down to the GAAP accounting principles that they're using. And it doesn't, and the market cap is somewhat irrelevant because if you look at the largest exchanges and the largest companies that actually you could say have product market fit, they might be bigger, but they don't adhere to the principles and the standards that you're describing. And so you're describing this flippening, essentially. That
I think if something is working and has fundamentals, like Michael knows this, I will just refuse to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, fundamentals may not be a reason why you can convince someone who's doing like daily fantasy sports gambling to go buy your altcoin, but it sure is a reason why people will not sell. And why that matters is because in a market like it is today for altcoins, where VC overhang is real, and basically what you have with VCs is they're selling coins to give back money to LPs to get more money to buy more coins. It's kind of a round trip, but this is just like outflow tape. This is what it looks like when an industry is losing actual bidding. To bring bidding back into the equation, you do need the VCs to be recapitalized, but I think they're going to need a lot more than just faith to buy tokens that are on the open market today. And even though people like maybe Hyperliquid's a little bit like overvalued relative to fundamentals, but like we think it can obviously go much higher because we have programmatic guarantees about where the revenue and fees are going. We're okay holding it. We're okay even buying more because we know that that will always be the case. If someone is not telling us, you know, what's going on, or there's not real revenue or real traction, why would we hold that token? Like that's the difference.
There's varying degrees of this as well, where like if you have a monthly call with the team and they're like, here's our report, here's what we're doing. It's great to get those kind of check-in moments. That's level one. Level two is like, you've got a website and I can go to it any day if I want and just check and see what the numbers are, see what the trends are. I can get the digest. It's great. There's that. And then there's like governance guarantees where it's like, it's 97% or whatever, whatever the revenue metric is for Hyperliquid, you're taking that, and for you to change that, you got to do a vote on chain with all the different validators. That's like transparency plus guarantees that, we're on calls with our LPs who have absolutely zero idea about anything going on in crypto, except for a few things. One of them, Bitcoin, digital gold, ETH, really picking up steam, and Hype is just printing cash. Like those are the three things that endowments in the United States, pension funds, like that they know about crypto right now. And so how does that third one get into the narrative? The third one gets into the narrative based off of all the trust, all the reliability, all the transparency, but then everything else on chain, and everybody's talking about it. And so like if you can break through that, you have a shot of being the size of Hyperliquid. If you don't, you won't. And I think governance guarantees is really, really strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Earlier on the stream today, I told Andy, I think the most dangerous thing that could happen to Hyperliquid is that Trump pardoned CZ because CZ has a vendetta for Hyperliquid. Do you guys think that there's some possibility of Binance entering the US market and them leveraging that to be a detriment to Hyperliquid?
As we just talked about, we're talking about decentralized. It's not like who's got more. It's the same thing. It's an apples to apples comparison. It's like it's apples to oranges. Mm-hmm. And every single time we have a weekend like we just saw, that difference becomes more and more pronounced.
when you're already transparent, there's no skeletons in the closet. That's like what's great about running a transparent protocol, a transparent fund. Like, do your worst, get pardoned, whatever. Like, there's nothing that's going to really materially change. In my mind, I think there will be some ramifications for Hyperliquid from this weekend. Just like the sheer amount of open interest that came off, it will take a while to build back. It's also quite tragic that a lot of the most rich Hyperliquid customers got liquidated in the process. So there will be a rebuilding period, but I think, the exchange will be a lot stronger for it. They will probably deploy HLP liquidity differently. They will probably have different relationships with market makers or how they treat their vaults. If you've ever seen that photo of the plane that gets like shot a bunch in World War II and then they patch up all the bullet holes, and like that's kind of, those areas are actually the safer areas. I kind of think of that in the same way as Hyperliquid today. And I do think there's also ramifications for the centralized exchanges. I think the use case of a lot of these synthetic dollars as margin is probably done. And like the use case of like SOL that got bridged to BNB that's then put on an exchange and used to trade against like random who knows what coins, that's probably done too.
Yeah.
And maybe those funds are done as well. Like, and I think that is kind of, there's some protocols that really prioritize growth at all costs. But like what you don't realize is like there's that one day every once in a while where like it's just over.
Yeah, it's the life of a turkey.
Right.
And
Thanksgiving goes with trading perps.
Thanksgiving's coming up, Vance.
Yeah, no. Canadian Thanksgiving, I think
not Canadian.
Yeah. We're doing that early. But like here's my 2 cents on the whole thing. When you're running up video game money on perps, that is when you should consider selling some. When you have a $70 million unrealized P&L that goes to zero, your life is forever changed. Not in a good way. There's no enlightenment coming from that. You're just pissed.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
You guys got your Monad cards?
Oh man, 𝘰𝘯𝘕monad.
𝘰𝘯𝘕monad.
I think we just got a couple minutes. Yeah, so the airdrop claim is tomorrow. It's going to be a unique claim. I have zero intel. Not sure if you guys have heard anything. I anticipate them doing something where you got to interact in some capacity within the community, maybe on the testnet, or basically like airdrops in crypto have gone from like, the easiest thing being like, you don't even got to do anything. It just gets sent to your wallet, to all the way to like these kind of like intricate, processes. But I think the community has pretty high expectations for Monad. We didn't do any rounds. Unfortunately, I DM'd 𝘗𝘠𝘕 for like a KOL round back in the day, and he just ghosted me, but that's life. I think this thing could trade. I just think could have a plasma like trade launch and trade 10 bill plus and be a big airdrop. And I think it could be like a little bit of a golden moment for we're looking for Monad and Mega ETH launches here, basically. I think from the chain perspective, and it seems like Monad's going to come first and probably bigger.
No view on either. I think both are good. I would say if you're going to buy spot, if I could impart one lesson from the past weekend, just buy spot.
Especially for very recently launched assets.
Yeah. Gents, I think the moral of today's podcast or the sum is Jeets out, Chad's in. Guys, stay strong out there. Stay off the leverage tickers, and I'll see you at all-time highs.
I'll see you at all-time highs. There we go. We'll end it on that. Thanks, guys.
All right, boys.
Cheers,
Be
fellas.
easy. Enjoy.
See you next time.
Have a good day. All right, Rob. Well, I mean, how do you come off of that not super bullish?
I'm just thinking, DJ and Ping.
Yeah, where's our boy? All right, what's ETH doing?
11.5 or 5.11?
Oh man, I'm tired. I'm gonna have to sign off. Let's see. ETH 4260, man. Bitcoin 116. Wow. Yeah, it's going, dude. I don't know what happened. I'm literally wired up and I lost Wi-Fi. That's crazy.
Came back pretty quick.
Just like crypto. Bitcoin's breaking out to new local highs in the 4 hour. I mean, I'm definitely no TA god, but SOL's at 207, hype pushing 42. I mean, these wicks are gonna go down as like biblical wicks. Like these wicks are just like, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Like, you know what's funny is like the meme over the weekend was Adam went to zero, like Cosmos went to zero. Of course, Adam got picked on. Like, it's just they're always getting singled out, bro.
Oh my goodness. Guys, stay safe out there.
Stay safe, stay comfy in spot, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.